Mowgli Stories from the Jungle Books by Rudyard Kipling. Mowgli's Brothers, Part 1. It was 7 o'clock, a very warm evening in the Seoni Hills, when Father Wolf woke up from his day's rest, scratched himself, yawned, and spread out his paws one after the other to get rid of the sleepy feeling in their tips. Mother Wolf lay with her big grey nose dropped across her four tumbling, squealing cubs, and the moon shone into the mouth of the cave where they all lived. "Ah, ooh," said Father Wolf. "It is time to hunt again." And he was going to spring downhill when a little shadow with a bushy tail crossed the threshold and whined. "Good luck go with you, O Chief of the Wolves, and good luck and strong white teeth go with the noble children, that they may never forget the hungry in this world." It was the jackal, Tabaqui, the dish-licker. And the wolves of India despise Tabaqui, because he runs about making mischief and telling tales and eating rags and pieces of leather from the village rubbish heaps. "Enter then and look," said Father Wolf stiffly. "But there is no food here." "For a wolf, no," said Tabaqui. "But for so mean a person as myself, a dry bone is a good feast." He scuttled to the back of the cave, where he found the bone of a buck with some meat on it, and sat cracking the end merrily. "All thanks for this good meal," he said, licking his lips. "How beautiful are the noble children! How large are their eyes, and so young too! Indeed, indeed, I might have remembered that the children of kings are men from the beginning." Now, Tabaqui knew as well as anyone else that there is nothing so unlucky as to compliment children to their faces, and it pleased him to see Mother and Father Wolf look uncomfortable. Tabaqui sat still, rejoicing in the mischief that he had made, and then he said spitefully, "Shirkhan, the big one, has shifted his hunting grounds. He will hunt among these hills for the next moon, so he has told me." Shirkhan was the tiger who lived near the Wainganga River 20 miles away. "He has no right," Father Wolf began angrily. "By the law of the jungle, he has no right to change his quarters without due warning." "His mother did not call him Lungri, the lame one, for nothing," said Mother Wolf quietly. "He has been lame in one foot from his birth. The villagers of the Wainganga are angry with him, and he's come here to make our villagers angry. They will scour the jungle for him when he's far away, and we and our children must run when the grass is set alight. Indeed, we're very grateful to Shere Khan." "Shall I tell him of your gratitude?" said Tabaqui. "Out!" snapped Father Wolf. "Out and hunt with thy master. Thou hast done harm enough for one night." "I go," said Tabaqui quietly. "Ye can hear Shere Khan below in the thickets. I might have saved myself the message." Father Wolf listened, and below in the valley that ran down to a little river he heard the dry, angry, snarly, sing-song whine of a tiger who has caught nothing and does not care if all the jungle knows it. "The fool," said Father Wolf, "to begin a night's work with that noise. Does he think that our buck are like his fat Wainganga bullocks?" "Shh! It is neither bullock nor buck he hunts tonight," said Mother Wolf. "It is man." The whine had changed to a sort of humming purr that seemed to come from every quarter of the compass. The law of the jungle, which never orders anything without a reason, forbids every beast to eat man, except when he's killing to show his children how to kill, and then he must hunt outside the hunting grounds of his pack or tribe. The real reason for this is that man-killing means, sooner or later, the arrival of men on elephants with guns, and hundreds of other men with gongs and rockets and torches. Then everybody in the jungle suffers. The purr grew louder and ended in the full-throated "Arr!" of the tiger's charge. Then there was a howl, an untigerish howl from Shere Khan. "He has missed," said Mother Wolf. "What is it?" Father Wolf ran out a few paces and heard Shere Khan muttering and mumbling savagely as he tumbled about in the scrub. "The fool has had no more sense than to jump at a woodcutter's campfire and has burned his feet," said Father Wolf with a grunt. "Tabaqui is with him." "Something is coming uphill," said Mother Wolf, twitching one ear. "Get ready." The bushes rustled a little in the thicket, and Father Wolf dropped with his haunches under him, ready for his leap. Then, if you had been watching, you would have seen the most wonderful thing in the world. The wolf checked in mid-spring. He made his bound before he saw what it was he was jumping at, and then he tried to stop himself. The result was that he shot up straight into the air for 4 or 5 feet, landing almost where he left ground. "Man," he snapped. "A man's cub. Look." Directly in front of him, holding on by a low branch, stood a naked brown baby who could just walk, as soft and as dimpled a little atom as ever came to a wolf's cave at night. He looked up into Father Wolf's face and laughed. "Is that a man's cub?" said Mother Wolf. "I've never seen one. Bring it here." A wolf accustomed to moving his own cubs can, if necessary, mouth an egg without breaking it. And though Father Wolf's jaws closed right on the child's back, not a tooth even scratched the skin as he laid it down among the cubs. "How little, how naked, and how bold," said Mother Wolf softly. "Ahai, he's taking his meal with the others. And so, this is a man's cub? Now, was there ever a wolf that could boast of a man's cub among her children?" The moonlight was blocked out of the mouth of the cave, for Shere Khan's great square head and shoulders were thrust into the entrance. Tabaqui behind him was squeaking, my lord, it went in here." "Shere Khan does us great honor," said Father Wolf, but his eyes were very angry. "What does Shere Khan need?" "My quarry. A man's cub went this way," said Shere Khan. "Its parents have run off. Give it to me." Arr. Shere Khan had jumped at a woodcutter's campfire, as Father Wolf had said, and was furious from the pain of his burned feet. But Father Wolf knew that the mouth of the cave was too narrow for a tiger to come in by. "The wolves are a free people," said Father Wolf. "They take orders from the head of the pack. The man's cub is ours, to kill if we choose." "Ye choose, and ye do not choose. What talk is this of choosing? Arr! It is I, Shere Khan, who speak." The tiger's roar filled the cave with thunder. Mother Wolf shook herself clear of the cubs and sprang forward, her eyes like 2 green moons in the darkness, facing the blazing eyes of Shere Khan. "And it is I, Raksha, the demon, who answer. The man's cub is mine, Lungri, mine, to me. He shall not be killed. He shall live to run with the pack and to hunt with the pack, and in the end, look you, hunter of little naked cubs, frog-eater, fish-killer, he shall hunt thee. Now get hence, or by the Samba that I killed, I eat no starved cattle. Back thou goest to thy mother, burn beast of the jungle, lamer than ever thou camest into the world. Go!" Shere Khan might have faced Father Wolf, but he could not stand up against Mother Wolf, for he knew that where he was, she had all the advantage of the ground and would fight to the death. So he backed out of the cave mouth, growling, and when he was clear, he shouted, "Each dog barks in his own yard. We will see what the pack will say to this fostering of man-cubs. The cub is mine, and to my teeth he will come in the end. Oh, bush-tailed thieves! Mother Wolf threw herself down panting among the cubs, and Father Wolf said to her gravely, Shirkhan speaks this much truth. The cub must be shown to the pack. Wilt thou still keep him, mother? Keep him? She gasped. He came naked by night alone, and very hungry. Yet he was not afraid. And that lame butcher would have killed him and would have run off to the Wainganga, while the villagers here hunted through all our lairs in revenge. Keep him? Assuredly I will keep him. Lie still, little frog. Oh, thou Mowgli. For Mowgli the frog I will call thee. The time will come when thou wilt hunt Shere Khan as he has hunted thee. But what will our pack say? Said Father Wolf. The law of the jungle lays down very clearly that any wolf may, when he marries, withdraw from the pack he belongs to. But as soon as his cubs are old enough to stand on their feet, he must bring them to the pack council, which is generally held once a month at full moon, in order that the other wolves may identify them. After that inspection, the cubs are free to run where they please, and until they've killed their first buck, no excuse is accepted if a grown wolf of the pack kills one of them. The punishment is death where the murderer can be found, and if you think for a minute, you will see that this must be so. Father Wolf waited till his cubs could run a little, and then on the night of the pack meeting took them and Mowgli and Mother Wolf to the Council Rock, a hilltop covered with stones and boulders where 100 wolves could hide. Akela, the great grey lone wolf who led all the pack by strength and cunning, lay out at full length on his rock, and below him sat 40 or more wolves of every size and colour. Akela from his rock would cry, Ye know the law! Ye know the law! Look well, O wolves! At last, and Mother Wolf's neck bristles lifted as the time came, Father Wolf pushed Mowgli the frog, as they called him, into the centre, where he sat, laughing and playing with some pebbles that glistened in the moonlight. A muffled roar came up from behind the rocks, the voice of Shere Khan crying, The cub is mine. Give him to me. What have the free people to do with a man's cub? Akela never even twitched his ears. All he said was, Look well, O wolves! What have the free people to do with the orders of any save the free people? Look well! There was a chorus of deep growls, and a young wolf in his 4th year flung back Shere Khan's question to Akela. What have the free people to do with a man's cub? Now, the law of the jungle lays down that if there is any dispute as to the right of a cub to be accepted by the pack, he must be spoken for by at least 2 members of the pack who are not his father and mother. Who speaks for this cub? Said Akela. Among the free people, who speaks? There was no answer, and Mother Wolf got ready for what she knew would be her last fight if things came to fighting. Then the only other creature who's allowed at the pack council, Baloo, the sleepy brown bear who teaches the wolf cubs the law of the jungle, old Baloo, who can come and go where he pleases because he eats only nuts and roots and honey, rose up on his hind quarters and grunted. The man's cub, the man's cub, he said. I speak for the man's cub. There is no harm in a man's cub. Let him run with the pack and be entered with the others. I myself will teach him. We need yet another, said Akela. Baloo has spoken, and he's our teacher for the young cubs. Who speaks besides Baloo? A black shadow dropped down into the circle. It was Bagheera, the Black Panther, inky black all over, but with the panther markings showing up in certain lights, like the pattern of watered silk. Everybody knew Bagheera, and nobody cared to cross his path, for he was as cunning as Tabaqui, as bold as the wild buffalo, and as reckless as the wounded elephant. But he had a voice as soft as wild honey dripping from a tree, and a skin softer than down. "O Akela, and ye the free people," he purred, "I have no right in your assembly, but the law of the jungle says that if there is a doubt which is not a killing matter in regard to a new cub, the life of that cub may be bought at a price, and the law does not say who may or may not pay that price. Am I right?" "Good, good," said the young wolves, who are always hungry. "Listen to Bagheera. The cub can be bought for a price. It is the law." "Knowing that I have no right to speak here, I ask your leave." "Speak then," cried 20 voices. "To kill a naked cub is shame. Baloo has spoken in his behalf. Now to Baloo's word I will add 1 bull and a fat one newly killed, not half a mile from here, if you will accept the man's cub according to the law. Is it difficult?" And then came Akela's deep bay, crying, "Look well! Look well, O wolves!" Mowgli was still deeply interested in the pebbles, and he did not notice when the wolves came and looked at him one by one. At last they all went down the hill for the dead bull, and only Akela, Bagheera, Baloo, and Mowgli's own wolves were left. Shirkhan roared still in the night, for he was very angry that Mowgli had not been handed over to him. "Aye, roar well," said Bagheera under his whiskers, "for the time comes when this naked thing will make thee roar to another tune, or I know nothing of man." "It was well done," said Akela. "Men and their cubs are very wise. He may be a help in time. Take him away," he said to Father Wolf, "and train him as befits one of the free people. Ow!" And that is how Mowgli was entered into the Seeonee wolf pack at the price of a bull and on Baloo's good word. The Law of the Jungle. Just to give you an idea of the immense variety of the jungle law, I have translated into verse, Baloo always recited them in a sort of sing-song, a few of the laws that apply to the wolves. There are, of course, hundreds and hundreds more, but these will serve as specimens of the simpler rulings. Now, this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky. And the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. As the creeper that girdles the tree trunk, the law runneth forward and back. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Wash daily from nose tip to tail tip. Drink deeply, but never too deep. And remember the night is for hunting, and forget not the day is for sleep. The jackal may follow the tiger, but cub, when thy whiskers are grown, remember the wolf is a hunter. Go forth and get food of thine own. Keep peace with the lords of the jungle, the tiger, the panther, the bear. And trouble not Hathi the silent, and mock not the boar in his lair. When pack meets with pack in the jungle, and neither will go from the trail, lie down till the leaders have spoken. It may be fair words shall prevail. When ye fight with a wolf of the pack, ye must fight him alone and afar, lest others take part in the quarrel, and the pack be diminished by war. The lair of the wolf is his refuge, and where he has made him his home, not even the head wolf may enter, not even the council may come. The lair of the wolf is his refuge, but where he has digged it too plain, the council shall send him a message, and so he shall change it again. If ye kill before midnight, be silent, and wake not the woods with your bay, lest ye frighten the deer from the crops, and the brothers go empty away. Ye may kill for yourselves and your mates and your cubs as they need, and ye can. But kill not for pleasure of killing, and 7 times never kill man. If ye plunder his kill from a weaker, devour not all in thy pride. Pack right is the right of the meanest, so leave him the head and the hide. The kill of the pack is the meat of the pack. Ye must eat where it lies, and no one may carry away of that meat to his lair, or he dies. The kill of the wolf is the meat of the wolf. He may do what he will, but till he has given permission, the pack may not eat of that kill. Cub right is the right of the yearling. From all of his pack he may claim full gorge when the killer has eaten, and none may refuse him the same. Lair right is the right of the mother. From all of her year she may claim 1 haunch of each kill for her litter, and none may deny her the same. Cave right is the right of the father, to hunt by himself for his own. He is freed of all calls to the pack. He is judged by the council alone. Because of his age and his cunning, because of his gripe and his paw, in all that the law leaveth open, the word of your head wolf is law. Now, these are the laws of the jungle, and many and mighty are they. But the head and the hoof of the law, and the haunch and the hump is obey. Eh? Cars hunting. It was in the days when Baloo was teaching Mowgli the law of the jungle that sometimes Bagheera, the Black Panther, would come lounging through the jungle to see how his pet was getting on, and would purr with his head against a tree while Mowgli recited the day's lesson to Baloo. The boy could climb almost as well as he could swim, and swim almost as well as he could run. So Baloo, the teacher of the law, taught him the wood and water laws, how to tell a rotten branch from a sound one, how to speak politely to the wild bees when he came upon a hive of them 50 feet above ground, what to say to Mung the bat when he disturbed him in the branches at midday, and how to warn the water snakes in the pools before he splashed down among them. Then, too, Mowgli was taught the stranger's hunting call, which must be repeated aloud till it is answered whenever one of the jungle people hunts outside his own grounds. Now, all this will show you how much Mowgli had to learn by heart, and he grew very tired of saying the same thing over 100 times. But, as Baloo said to Bagheera one day, when Mowgli had been cuffed and ran off in a temper, "Better he should be bruised from head to foot by me who love him, than that he should come to harm through ignorance. Come, little brother." "My head is ringing like a bee tree," said a sullen little voice over their heads, and Mowgli slid down a tree trunk, very angry and indignant. "Tell Bagheera, then, the master words of the jungle that I have taught thee this day." "Master words for which people?" said Mowgli, delighted to show off. "The jungle has many tongues. I know them all." "Well, say the word for the hunting peoples, then, great scholar." "We be of one blood, ye and I," said Mowgli, giving the words the bear accent which all the hunting people use. "Good. Now for the birds," Mowgli repeated, with the kite's whistle at the end of the sentence. "Now for the snake people," said Bagheera. The answer was a perfectly indescribable hiss, and Mowgli kicked up his feet behind, clapped his hands together to applaud himself, and jumped onto Bagheera's back, where he sat sideways, drumming with his heels on the glossy skin and making the worst faces he could think of at Baloo. "No one then is to be feared," Baloo wound up, patting his big furry stomach with pride. "Except his own tribe," said Bagheera under his breath. Mowgli had been trying to make himself heard by pulling at Bagheera's shoulder fur and kicking hard. When the two listened to him, he was shouting at the top of his voice, "And so I shall have a tribe of my own and lead them through the branches all day long." "Mowgli," said Baloo, "thou hast been talking with the Bandarlog, the monkey people." Mowgli looked at Bagheera to see if the panther was angry too, and Bagheera's eyes were as hard as jade stones. "Why have I never been taken among the monkey people? They stand on their feet as I do. They do not hit me with hard paws. They play all day. Let me get up, Baloo. Let me up. I will play with them again." "Listen, man-cub," said the bear, and his voice rumbled like thunder on a hot night. "I have taught thee all the law of the jungle for all the peoples of the jungle, except the monkey folk who live in the trees. They have no law. They are outcasts. They have no speech of their own, but use the stolen words which they overhear when they listen, and peep and wait up above in the branches. Their way is not our way. They are without leaders. They have no remembrance. They boast and chatter and pretend that they are a great people about to do great affairs in the jungle, but the falling of a nut turns their minds to laughter, and all is forgotten. We of the jungle have no dealings with them. We do not drink where the monkeys drink. We do not go where the monkeys go. We do not hunt where they hunt. We do not die where they die. Hast thou ever heard of me speak of the Bandarlog till today?" "No," said Mowgli in a whisper, for the forest was very still now Baloo had finished. "The monkey people are forbidden," said Baloo. "Forbidden to the jungle people. Remember. A fresh shower came down on their heads, and the two trotted away, taking Mowgli with them. What Baloo had said about the monkeys was perfectly true. None of the beasts would notice them, and that was why they were so pleased when Mowgli came to play with them and they heard how angry Baloo was. One of them invented what seemed to him a brilliant idea, and he told all the others that Mowgli would be a useful person to keep in the tribe, because he could weave sticks together for protection from the wind. So, if they caught him, they could make him teach them. Of course, Mowgli, as a woodcutter's child, inherited all sorts of instincts and used to make little huts of fallen branches without thinking how he came to do it. And the monkey people watching in the trees considered his play most wonderful. This time, they said, they were really going to have a leader and become the wisest people in the jungle, so wise that everyone else would notice and envy them. Therefore, they followed Baloo and Bagheera and Mowgli through the jungle very quietly till it was time for the midday nap, and Mowgli slept between the panther and the bear. The next thing he remembered was feeling hands on his legs and arms, hard, strong little hands, and then a swash of branches in his face, and then he was staring down through the swaying boughs as Baloo woke the jungle with his deep cries, and Bagheera bounded up the trunk with every tooth bared. The Bandarlog howled with triumph and scuffled away to the upper branches where Bagheera dared not follow, shouting, "He has noticed us! Bagheera has noticed us!" Then they began their flight. And the flight of the monkey people through tree land is one of the things nobody can describe. They have their regular roads and crossroads, up hills and down hills, all laid out from 50 to 70 or 100 feet above ground, and by these they can travel even at night if necessary. Sometimes he could see for miles and miles across the still green jungle, as a man on the top of a mast can see for miles across the sea. And then the branches and leaves would lash him across the face, and he and his two guards would be almost down to earth again. For a time he was afraid of being dropped. Then he grew angry, but knew better than to struggle. And then he began to think. The first thing was to send back word to Baloo and Bagheera, for at the pace the monkeys were going, he knew his friends would be left far behind. Cheel, the kite, balancing and wheeling as he kept watch over the jungle waiting for things to die, Cheel saw that the monkeys were carrying something and dropped a few 100 yards to find out whether their load was good to eat. He whistled with surprise when he saw Mowgli being dragged up to a treetop and heard him give the kite call for "We be of one blood, thou and I." "Mark my trail," Mowgli shouted. "Tell Baloo of the Seeonee pack and Bagheera of the Council Rock." "In whose name, brother?" "Mowgli the Frog. Man cub they call me. Mark my trail." Cheel nodded and rose up till he looked no bigger than a speck of dust, and there he hung, watching with his telescope eyes the swaying of the treetops as Mowgli's escort whirled along. Meantime, Baloo and Bagheera were furious with rage and grief. Bagheera climbed as he had never climbed before, but the thin branches broke beneath his weight, and he slipped down, his claws full of bark. Baloo clasped his paws over his ears and rolled to and fro, moaning. "Well, at least he gave me all the words correctly a little time ago," said Bagheera impatiently. "What would the jungle think if I, the Black Panther, curled myself up like Ikki the porcupine and howled?" "What do I care what the jungle thinks? Oh, he may be dead by now." "Unless and until they drop him from the branches in sport, or kill him out of idleness, I have no fear for the man-cub. But, and it is a great evil, he is in the power of the Bandarlog, and they, because they live in trees, have no fear of any of our people." Bagheera licked one forepaw thoughtfully. Fool that I am! Oh, fat, brown, root-digging fool that I am!" said Baloo, uncoiling himself with a jerk. "It is true what Hathi, the wild elephant, says, to each his own fear. And they, the Bandarlog, fear Kaa, the rock snake. He can climb as well as they can. The whisper of his name makes their wicked tails cold. Let us go to Kaa." Here Baloo rubbed his faded brown shoulder against the panther, and they went off to look for Kaa, the rock python. They found him stretched out on a warm ledge in the afternoon sun, admiring his beautiful new coat, for he had been in retirement for the last 10 days, changing his skin, and now he was very splendid, darting his big, blunt-nosed head along the ground and twisting the 30 feet of his body into fantastic knots and curves, and licking his lips as he thought of his dinner to come. Kaa was not a poison snake. In fact, he rather despised the poison snakes as cowards, but his strength lay in his hug, and when he had once lapped his huge coils round anybody, there was no more to be said. "Good hunting!" cried Baloo, sitting up on his haunches. Like all snakes of his breed, Kaa was rather deaf and did not hear the call at first. Then he curled up ready for any accident, his head lowered. "Good hunting for us all," he answered. "Ho, Baloo, what dost thou do here?" "Good hunting, Bagheera." "We are hunting," said Baloo carelessly. He knew that you must not hurry Kaa. "Give me permission to come with you," said Kaa. "I'm a fair length," said Kaa with a little pride. "I came very near to falling on my last hunt, very near indeed, and the noise of my slipping, for my tail was not tight wrapped round the tree, waked the Bandarlog, and they called me most evil names." "Footless yellow earthworm," said Bagheera under his whiskers, as though he were trying to remember something. "Sss! Have they ever called me that?" said Kaa. "Something of that kind it was that they shouted to us last moon, but we never noticed them." Now, a snake, especially a wary old python like Kaa, very seldom shows that he's angry, but Baloo and Bagheera could see the big swallowing muscles on either side of Kaa's throat ripple and bulge. "The Bandarlog have shifted their grounds," he said quietly. "When I came up into the sun today, I heard them whooping among the tree-tops." It is the Bandarlog that we follow now," said Baloo. "The trouble is this, Kaa. Those nut-stealers and pickers of palm leaves have stolen away our man-cub." "I heard some news from Ikki of a man-thing that was entered into a wolf-pack, but I did not believe." "But it is true. He's such a man-cub as never was," said Baloo. "The best and wisest and boldest of man-cubs, my own pupil, who shall make the name of Baloo famous through all the jungles, and besides we love him, Kaa." "Tss, tss," said Kaa, shaking his head to and fro. "I also have known what love is." "Our man-cub is in the hands of the Bandarlog now, and we know that of all the jungle people, they fear Kaa alone." "They fear me alone. They have good reason," said Kaa. "Chattering foolish, vain, foolish, and chattering are the monkeys. But a man-thing in their hands is in no good luck. Now, whither went they with the cub?" "The jungle alone knows. Towards the sunset, I believe," said Baloo. "Up, up, up, up! Illoo! Illoo, illoo! Look up! Baloo of the Seeonee wolf pack!" Baloo looked up to see where the voice came from, and there was Cheel the kite, sweeping down with the sun shining on the upturned flanges of his wings. It was near Cheel's bedtime, but he had ranged all over the jungle looking for the bear. "What is it?" said Baloo. "I have seen Mowgli among the Bandarlog. He bade me tell you. The Bandarlog have taken him beyond the river to the monkey city, to the cool lairs." They all knew where that place was, but few of the jungle people ever went there, because what they called the coal lairs was an old deserted city, lost and buried in the jungle, and beasts seldom use a place that men have once used. Mowgli had never seen an Indian city before, and though this was almost a heap of ruins, it seemed very wonderful and splendid. Some king had built it long ago on a little hill. You could still trace the stone causeways that led up to the ruined gates where the last splinters of wood hung to the worn, rusted hinges. Trees had grown into and out of the walls, the battlements were tumbled down and decayed, and wild creepers hung out of the windows of the towers on the walls in bushy, hanging clumps. The monkeys called the place their city and pretended to despise the jungle people because they lived in the forest. Mowgli picked up some creepers and began to work them in and out, and the monkeys tried to imitate, but in a very few minutes they lost interest and began to pull their friends' tails or jump up and down on all fours, coughing. "Tabaqui, the jackal, must have bitten all these people," he said to himself, "and now they have the madness. Certainly this is Diwani, the madness. Do they never go to sleep? Now there is a cloud coming to cover that moon. If it were only a big enough cloud, I might try to run away in the darkness. Oh, but I am tired." That same cloud was being watched by two good friends in the ruined ditch below the city wall. For Bagheera and Kaa, knowing well how dangerous the monkey people were in large numbers, did not wish to run any risks. The monkeys never fight unless they are 100 to 1, and few in the jungle care for those odds. "I will go to the west wall," Kaa whispered, "and come down swiftly with the slope of the ground in my favor." "I know it," said Bagheera. "Would that Baloo were here, but we must do what we can." "Good hunting," said Kaa grimly, and glided away to the west wall. That happened to be the least ruined of any, and the big snake was delayed a while before he could find a way up the stones. The cloud hid the moon, and as Mowgli wondered what would come next, he heard Bagheera's light feet on the terrace. The Black Panther had raced up the slope almost without a sound, and was striking, he knew better than to waste time in biting, right and left among the monkeys, who were seated round Mowgli in circles 50 and 60 deep. There was a howl of fright and rage, and then as Bagheera tripped on the rolling, kicking bodies beneath him, a monkey shouted, "There is only one here! Kill him! Kill!" A scuffling mass of monkeys, biting, scratching, tearing and pulling, closed over Bagheera, while 5 or 6 laid hold of Mowgli, dragged him up the wall of the summer house, and pushed him through the hole of the broken dome. A man-trained boy would have been badly bruised, for the fall was a good 15 feet. But Mowgli fell as Baloo had taught him to fall, and landed on his feet. Mowgli stood as quietly as he could, peering through the open work and listening to the furious din of the fight round the Black Panther, the yells and chatterings and scufflings, and Bagheera's deep, hoarse cough as he backed and bucked and twisted and plunged under the heaps of his enemies. For the first time since he was born, Bagheera was fighting for his life. Baloo must be at hand. Bagheera would not have come alone, Mowgli thought, and then he called aloud, "To the tank, Bagheera! Roll to the water tanks! Roll and plunge! Get to the water!" Bagheera heard, and the cry that told him Mowgli was safe gave him new courage. He worked his way desperately, inch by inch, straight for the reservoirs, hitting in silence. Then, from the ruined wall nearest the jungle, rose up the rumbling war shout of Baloo. The old bear had done his best, but he could not come before. "Bagheera!" he shouted. "I am here! I climb, I haste! Ahuara! The stones slip under my feet. Wait my coming, O most infamous Bandarlog!" He panted up the terrace, only to disappear to the head in a wave of monkeys, but he threw himself squarely on his haunches and, spreading out his four paws, hugged as many as he could hold, and then began to hit with a regular bat, 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 like the flipping strokes of a paddle wheel. A crash and a splash told Mowgli that Bagheera had fought his way to the tank where the monkeys could not follow. The panther lay gasping for breath, his head just out of the water, while the monkeys stood 3 deep on the red steps, dancing up and down with rage, ready to spring upon him from all sides if he came out to help Baloo. It was then that Bagheera lifted up his dripping chin and in despair gave the snake's call for protection. "We be of one blood, ye and I." For he believed that Kaa had turned tail at the last minute. Even Baloo, half smothered under the monkeys on the edge of the terrace, could not help chuckling as he heard the Black Panther asking for help. Kaa had only just worked his way over the west wall, landing with a wrench that dislodged a coping stone into the ditch. He had no intention of losing any advantage of the ground, and coiled and uncoiled himself once or twice to be sure that every foot of his long body was in working order. Then Kaa came straight, quickly, and anxious to kill. The fighting strength of a python is in the driving blow of his head, backed by all the strength and weight of his body. If you can imagine a lance or a battering ram or a hammer weighing nearly 1/2 ton, driven by a cool, quiet mind living in the handle of it, you can roughly imagine what Kaa was like when he fought. A python 4 or 5 feet long can knock a man down if he hits him fairly in the chest, and Kaa was 30 feet long, as you know. His first stroke was delivered into the heart of the crowd round Baloo, was sent home with shut mouth in silence. And there was no need of a second. The monkeys scattered with cries of, "Kaa! It is Kaa! Run! Run!" And so they ran, stammering with terror, to the walls and the roofs of the houses, and Baloo drew a deep breath of relief. His fur was much thicker than Bagheera's, but he had suffered sorely in the fight. Then Kaa opened his mouth for the first time and spoke one long, hissing word. And the faraway monkeys, hurrying to the defence of the coal lairs, stayed where they were, cowering, till the loaded branches bent and crackled under them. The monkeys on the walls and the empty houses stopped their cries, and in the stillness that fell upon the city, Mowgli heard Bagheera shaking his wet sides as he came up from the tank. "Get the man-cub out of that trap. I can do no more," Bagheera gasped. "Let us take the man-cub and go. They may attack again." "They will not move till I order them. Stay you. So!" Kaa hissed, and the city was silent once more. "Baloo, art thou hurt?" "I am not sure that they did not pull me into 100 little bearlings," said Baloo, gravely shaking one leg after the other. "Wow, I am sore. Kaa, we owe thee, I think, our lives, Bagheera and I." "No matter. Where is the manling?" "Here, in a trap. I cannot climb out," cried Mowgli. The curve of the broken dome was above his head. "Take him away. He dances like Mord the peacock. He will crush our young," said the cobras inside. said Kaa with a chuckle. He has friends everywhere, this manling. Stand back, manling, and hide you, O poison people. I break down the wall. Kaa looked carefully till he found a discoloured crack in the marble tracery, showing a weak spot, made 2 or 3 light taps with his head to get the distance, and then, lifting up 6 feet of his body clear of the ground, sent home 6 full-power smashing blows, nose first. The screen-work broke and fell away in a cloud of dust and rubbish, and Mowgli leaped through the opening and flung himself between Baloo and Bagheera, an arm round each big neck. "Art thou hurt?" said Baloo, hugging him softly. "I'm sore, hungry, and not a little bruised. But they've handled ye grievously, my brothers. Ye bleed." "Others also?" said Bagheera, licking his lips and looking at the monkey dead on the terrace and round the tank. "Oh, it is nothing if thou art safe, oh, my pride of all little frogs," whimpered Baloo. "Of that we shall judge later," said Bagheera. "But here is Kaa, to whom we owe the battle, and thou owest thy life. Thank him according to our customs, Mowgli." Mowgli turned and saw the great python's head swaying a foot above his own. "So this is the manling," said Kaa. "We be of one blood, thou and I," Mowgli answered. "I take my life from thee tonight. My kill shall be thy kill if ever thou art hungry, O Kaa." "All thanks, little brother," said Kaa. The python dropped his head lightly for a minute on Mowgli's shoulder. "A brave heart and courteous tongue," said he. "They shall carry thee far through the jungle, manling. But now go hence quickly with thy friends. Go and sleep, for the moon sets, and what follows, it is not well that thou shouldst see." The moon was sinking behind the hills, and the lines of trembling monkeys huddled together on the walls, and battlements looked like ragged, shaky fringes of things. Baloo went down to the tank for a drink, and Bagheera began to put his fur in order as Kaa glided out into the centre of the terrace and brought his jaws together with a ringing snap that drew all the monkeys' eyes upon him. "The moon sets," he said. "Is there yet light to see?" From the walls came a moan like a wind in the tree-tops. "We see, O Kaa." "Good. Begins now the dance. The dance of the hunger of Kaa. Sit still and watch." He turned twice or thrice in a big circle, weaving his head from right to left. Then he began making loops and figures of 8 with his body, and soft oozy triangles that melted into squares and 5-sided figures, and coiled mounds, never resting, never hurrying, and never stopping his low humming song. It grew darker and darker till at last the dragging, shifting coils disappeared, but they could hear the rustle of the scales. Baloo and Bagheera stood still as stone, growling in their throats, their neck hair bristling, and Mowgli watched and wondered. "Bandarlog," said the voice of Kaa at last. "Come all 1 pace closer to me." The lines of the monkeys swayed forward helplessly, and Baloo and Bagheera took 1 stiff step forward with them. Closer, hissed Kaa, and they all moved again. Mowgli laid his hands on Baloo and Bagheera to get them away, and the two great beasts started as though they had been waked from a dream. "Keep thy hand on my shoulder," Bagheera whispered. "Keep it there, or I must go back to Kaa. Ah!" "It is only old Kaa making circles on the dust," said Mowgli. "Let us go." And the three slipped off through a gap in the walls to the jungle. "Woof!" said Baloo, when he stood under the still trees again, and he shook himself all over. "But what was the meaning of it all?" said Mowgli, who did not know anything of a python's powers of fascination. "I saw no more than a big snake making foolish circles till the dark came, and his nose was all sore. Ho ho!" "Mowgli," said Bagheera angrily, "his nose was sore on thy account, as my ears and sides and paws and Baloo's neck and shoulders are bitten on thy account. Neither Baloo nor Bagheera will be able to hunt with pleasure for many days." "Oh, it is nothing," said Baloo. "We have the man-cub again." "True, but he has cost us heavily in time, which might have been spent in good hunting, in wounds, in hair. I'm half plucked along my back, and last of all, in honor. For remember, Mowgli, I, who am the Black Panther, was forced to call upon Kaa for protection, and Baloo and I were both made stupid as little birds by the hunger dance. All this man-cub came of thy playing with the Bandarlog." "True, it is true," said Mowgli sorrowfully. "I'm an evil man-cub, and my stomach is sad in me." "What says the law of the jungle, Baloo?" Baloo did not wish to bring Mowgli into any more trouble, but he could not tamper with the law, so he mumbled, "Sorrow never stays punishment. Mowgli, hast thou anything to say?" "Nothing. I did wrong. Baloo and thou are wounded. It is just." Bagheera gave him 6 love taps. From a panther's point of view, they would hardly have waked one of his own cubs, but for a 7-year-old boy, they amounted to as severe a beating as you could wish to avoid. When it was all over, Mowgli sneezed and picked himself up without a word. "Now," said Bagheera, "jump on my back, little brother, and we will go home." One of the beauties of jungle law is that punishment settles all scores. There is no nagging afterwards. Mowgli laid his head down on Bagheera's back and slept so deeply that he never waked when he was put down by Mother Wolf's side in the home cave. Mowgli's Brothers, Part 2. Now you must be content to skip 10 or 11 whole years, and only guess at all the wonderful life that Mowgli led among the wolves, because if it were written out, it would fill ever so many books. He grew up with the cubs, and Father Wolf taught him his business and the meaning of things in the jungle, till every rustle in the grass, every breath of the warm night air, every note of the owls above his head, every scratch of a bat's claws as it roosted for a while in a tree, and every splash of every little fish jumping in a pool meant just as much to him as the work of his office means to a businessman. Mother Wolf told him once or twice that Shere Khan was not a creature to be trusted, and that some day he must kill Shere Khan. But though a young wolf would have remembered that advice every hour, Mowgli forgot it because he was only a boy, though he would have called himself a wolf if he had been able to speak in any human tongue. Shere Khan was always crossing his path in the jungle, for as Akela grew older and feebler, the lame tiger had come to be great friends with the younger wolves of the pack, who followed him for scraps, a thing that Akela would never have allowed if he had dared to push his authority to the proper bounds. Then Shere Khan would flatter them and wonder that such fine young hunters were content to be led by a dying wolf and a man's cub. "They tell me," Shere Khan would say, "that at council ye dare not look him between the eyes." And the young wolves would growl and bristle. Bagheera, who had eyes and ears everywhere, knew something of this, and once or twice he told Mowgli in so many words that Shere Khan would kill him some day, and Mowgli would laugh and answer, "I have the pack, and I have thee, and Baloo, though he's so lazy, might strike a blow or two for my sake. Why should I be afraid?" It was one very warm day that a new notion came to Bagheera, born of something that he had heard. Perhaps Ikki the porcupine had told him, but he said to Mowgli when they were deep in the jungle, as the boy lay with his head on Bagheera's beautiful black skin, "Little brother, how often have I told thee that Shere Khan is thy enemy?" "As many times as there are nuts on that palm," said Mowgli, who naturally could not count. "What of it? I'm sleepy, Bagheera, and Shere Khan is all long tail and loud talk, like Mord the peacock." "But this is no time for sleeping. Baloo knows it, I know it, the pack know it, and even the foolish deer know. Tabaqui has told thee too." "Ho, ho," said Mowgli. "Tabaqui came to me not long ago with some rude talk that I was a naked man's cub, and not fit to dig pig nuts. But I caught Tabaqui by the tail and swung him twice against a palm tree to teach him better manners. That was foolishness. Open those eyes, little brother. Shere Khan dare not kill thee in the jungle, but remember, Akela is very old, and soon the day comes when he cannot kill his buck, and then he will be leader no more. Many of the wolves that looked thee over when thou wast brought to the council first are old too, and the young wolves believe, as Shere Khan has taught them, that a man-cub has no place with the pack. In a little time thou wilt be a man." "And what is a man that he should not run with his brothers?" said Mowgli. "I was born in the jungle, I've obeyed the law of the jungle, and there is no wolf of ours from whose paws I've not pulled a thorn. Surely they are my brothers." Bagheera stretched himself at full length and half shut his eyes. "Little brother," said he, "feel under my jaw." Mowgli put up his strong brown hand, and just under Bagheera's silky chin, where the giant rolling muscles were all hid by the glossy hair, he came upon a little bald spot. "There is no one in the jungle that knows that I, Bagheera, carry that mark, the mark of the collar. And yet, little brother, I was born among men, and it was among men that my mother died, in the cages of the king's palace at Udaipur. It was because of this that I paid the price for thee at the council when thou wast a little naked cub. Yes, I too was born among men, till one night I felt that I was Bagheera, the panther, and no man's plaything, and I broke the silly lock with one blow of my paw and came away. And even as I returned to my jungle, so thou must go back to men at last, to the men who are thy brothers, if thou art not killed in the council." "But why? Why should any wish to kill me?" said Mowgli. "Look at me," said Bagheera. and Mowgli looked at him steadily between the eyes. The big panther turned his head away in half a minute. "That is why," he said, shifting his paw on the leaves. "Not even I can look thee between the eyes, and I was born among men, and I love thee, little brother. The others, they hate thee because their eyes cannot meet thine, because thou art a man." "I did not know these things," said Mowgli, and he frowned under his heavy black eyebrows. "It is in my heart that when Akela misses his next kill, and at each hunt it costs him more to pin the buck, the pack will turn against him and against thee. They will hold a jungle council at the rock, and then... "I have it!" said Bagheera, leaping up. "Go thou down quickly to the men's huts in the valley, and take some of the red flower which they grow there, so that when the time comes thou mayst have even a stronger friend than I or Baloo or those of the pack that love thee. Get the red flower." By red flower, Bagheera meant fire. Only no creature in the jungle will call fire by its proper name. Every beast lives in deadly fear of it and invents 100 ways of describing it. "The red flower," said Mowgli. "That grows outside their huts in the twilight. I will get some." "There speaks the man's cub," said Bagheera proudly. "Remember that it grows in little pots. Get one swiftly and keep it by thee for time of need." "Good," said Mowgli. "I go." "But art thou sure, O my Bagheera?" He slipped his arm round the splendid neck and looked deep into the big eyes. "Art thou sure that all this is Shere Khan's doing?" "By the broken lock that freed me, I am sure, little brother." "Then, by the bull that bought me, I will pay Shere Khan full tail for this, and it may be a little over," said Mowgli, and he bounded away. "That is a man. That is all a man," said Bagheera to himself, lying down again. Mowgli was far and far through the forest, running hard, and his heart was hot in him, and he plunged downward through the bushes to the stream at the bottom of the valley. There he checked, for he heard the yell of the pack hunting, heard the bellow of a hunted sambar, and the snort as the buck turned at bay. Then there were wicked, bitter howls from the young wolves. "Akela! Akela! Let the lone wolf show his strength! Room for the leader of the pack! Spring, Akela!" The lone wolf must have sprung and missed his hold, for Mowgli heard the snap of his teeth, and then a yelp as the sambar knocked him over with his forefoot. He did not wait for anything more, but dashed on, and the yells grew fainter behind him as he ran into the croplands where the villagers lived. "Bagheera spoke truth," he panted, as he nestled down in some cattle fodder by the window of a hut. "Tomorrow is one day both for Akela and for me." Then Mowgli pressed his face close to the window and watched the fire on the hearth. He saw the husbandman's wife get up and feed it in the night with black lumps, and when the morning came and the mists were all white and cold, he saw the man's child pick up a wicker pot plastered inside with earth, fill it with lumps of red-hot charcoal, put it under his blanket, and go out to tend the cows in the byre. "Is that all?" said Mowgli. "Ha! If a cub can do it, there is nothing to fear." So he strode round the corner and met the boy, took the pot from his hand, and disappeared into the mist, while the boy howled with fear. "They're very like me," said Mowgli, blowing into the pot as he had seen the woman do. "This thing will die if I do not give it things to eat." And he dropped twigs and dried bark on the red stuff. Halfway up the hill he met Bagheera, with the morning dew shining like moonstones on his coat. "Akela has missed," said the panther. "They would have killed him last night, but they needed thee also. They were looking for thee on the hill." "I was among the ploughed lands. I'm ready. See!" Mowgli held up the fire pot. All that day, Mowgli sat in the cave, tending his fire pot and dipping dry branches into it to see how they looked. He found a branch that satisfied him, and in the evening Mowgli went to the council, still laughing. Akela, the lone wolf, lay by the side of his rock as a sign that the leadership of the pack was open, and Shirkhan, with his following of scrap-fed wolves, walked to and fro openly, being flattered. When they were all gathered together, Shirkhan began to speak, a thing he would never have dared to do when Akela was in his prime. "He has no right," whispered Bagheera. "Say so. He's a dog's son. He will be frightened." Mowgli sprang to his feet. "Free people," he cried. "Does Shere Khan lead the pack? What has a tiger to do with our leadership?" "Seeing that the leadership is yet open and being asked to speak," Shere Khan began. "By whom?" said Mowgli. "Are we all jackals to fawn on this cattle butcher? The leadership of the pack is with the pack alone." There were yells of, "Silence, thou man's cub! Let him speak, he has kept our law!" And at last the seniors of the pack thundered, "Let the dead wolf speak!" When a leader of the pack has missed his kill, he is called the dead wolf as long as he lives, which is not long. Akela raised his old head wearily. "Free people, and ye too, jackals of Shere Khan, for 12 seasons I've led ye to and from the kill, and in all that time not one has been trapped or maimed. Now I have missed my kill. Your right is to kill me here on the council rock now. Therefore I ask, who comes to make an end of the lone wolf? For it is my right by the law of the jungle that ye come one by one." There was a long hush, for no single wolf cared to fight Akela to the death. Then Shere Khan roared, "Bah! What have we to do with this toothless fool? He is doomed to die. It is the man-cub who has lived too long. Free people, he was my meat from the first. Give him to me. I'm weary of this man-wolf folly. He's a man, a man's child, and from the marrow of my bones, I hate him." "He's a man, a man, a man!" snarled the pack, and most of the wolves began to gather round Shere Khan, whose tail was beginning to switch. "Now the business is in thy hands," said Bagheera to Mowgli. "We can do no more except fight." Mowgli stood upright, the fire-pot in his hands. Then he stretched out his arms and yawned in the face of the council, but he was furious with rage and sorrow, for wolf-like the wolves had never told him how they hated him. "Listen, you!" he cried. "There is no need for this dog's jabber. Ye have told me so often tonight that I am a man that I feel your words are true. So I do not call ye my brothers any more, but Sarg, dogs, as a man should. And that we may see the matter more plainly, I, the man, have brought here a little of the red flour which ye dogs fear." He flung the fire-pot on the ground, and some of the red coals lit a tuft of dried moss that flared up as all the council drew back in terror before the leaping flames. Mowgli thrust his dead branch into the fire till the twigs lit and crackled, and whirled it above his head among the cowering wolves. Akela, the grim old wolf who had never asked for mercy in his life, gave one piteous look at Mowgli as the boy stood all naked, his long black hair tossing over his shoulders in the light of the blazing branch that made the shadows jump and quiver. "Good," said Mowgli, staring round slowly. "I see that ye are dogs. I go from you to my own people, if they be my own people. The jungle is shut to me, and I must forget your talk and your companionship. But I will be more merciful than ye are, because I was all but your brother in blood. I promise that when I am a man among men, I will not betray ye to men as ye have betrayed me." He kicked the fire with his foot, and the sparks flew up. "There shall be no war between any of us and the pack, but here is a debt to pay before I go." He strode forward to where Shere Khan sat, blinking stupidly at the flames, and caught him with a tuft on his chin. Bagheera followed in case of accidents. "Up, dog!" Mowgli cried. "Up when a man speaks, or I will set that coat ablaze!" Shere Khan's ears lay flat back on his head, and he shut his eyes, for the blazing branch was very near. "This cattle killer said he would kill me in the council because he had not killed me when I was a cub. Stir a whisker, Lungri, and I ram the red flower down thy gullet." He beat Shere Khan over the head with the branch, and the tiger whimpered and whined in an agony of fear. "Pah! Singed jungle cat, go now! But remember, when next I come to the council rock as a man should come, it'll be with Shere Khan's hide on my head. For the rest, Akela goes free to live as he pleases. Ye will not kill him, because that is not my will. Nor do I think that ye will sit here any longer, lolling out your tongues as though ye were somebodies, instead of dogs whom I drive out thus. Go!" The fire was burning furiously at the end of the branch, and Mowgli struck right and left round the circle, and the wolves ran howling, with the sparks burning their fur. At last there were only Akela, Bagheera, and perhaps 10 wolves that had taken Mowgli's part. Then something began to hurt Mowgli inside him, as he had never been hurt in his life before, and he caught his breath and sobbed, and the tears ran down his face. "What is it? What is it?" he said. "I do not wish to leave the jungle, and I do not know what this is. Am I dying, Bagheera?" "No, little brother. That is only tears, such as men use," said Bagheera. "Now I know thou art a man. The jungle is shut indeed to thee henceforward. Let them fall, Mowgli. They are only tears." So Mowgli sat and cried as though his heart would break, and he had never cried in all his life before. "Now," he said, "I will go to men, but first I must say farewell to my mother." And he went to the cave where she lived with Father Wolf, and he cried on her coat while the 4 cubs howled miserably. "Ye will not forget me," said Mowgli. "Come soon," said Father Wolf. "Oh, wise little frog, come again soon, for we be old, thy mother and I." "Come soon," said Mother Wolf. "Little naked son of mine, for listen, child of man, I loved thee." "I will surely come," said Mowgli, "and when I come, it'll be to lay out Shere Khan's hide upon the council rock. Do not forget me. Tell them in the jungle never to forget me." The dawn was beginning to break when Mowgli went down the hillside alone to meet those mysterious things that are called men. Tiger, tiger. When Mowgli left the wolf's cave after the fight with the pack at the council rock, he went down to the ploughed lands where the villagers lived But he would not stop there because he was too near to the jungle, and he hurried on, keeping to the rough road that ran down the valley, and followed it at a steady jog-trot for nearly 20 miles, till he came to a country that he did not know. The valley opened out into a great plain, dotted over with rocks and cut up by ravines. At one end stood a little village, and at the other the thick jungle came down in a sweep to the grazing grounds, and stopped there as though it had been cut off with a hoe. All over the plain, cattle and buffaloes were grazing, and when the little boys in charge of the herd saw Mowgli, they shouted and ran away, and the yellow pariah dogs that hang about every Indian village barked. Mowgli walked on, for he was feeling hungry, and when he came to the village gate, he saw the big thorn bush that was drawn up before the gate at twilight pushed to one side. He said, for he had come across more than one such barricade in his night rambles after things to eat. So, men are afraid of the people of the jungle here also. He sat down by the gate, and when a man came out, he stood up, opened his mouth, and pointed down it to show that he wanted food. The man stared and ran back up the one street of the village, shouting for the priest, who was a big, fat man dressed in white, with a red and yellow mark on his forehead. The priest came to the gate, and with him at least 100 people, who stared and talked and shouted and pointed at Mowgli. "They have no manners, these menfolk," said Mowgli to himself. So he threw back his long hair and frowned at the crowd. "What is there to be afraid of?" said the priest. "Look at the marks on his arms and legs. They are the bites of wolves. He is but a wolf child run away from the jungle." Of course, in playing together, the cubs had often nipped Mowgli harder than they intended, and there were white scars all over his arms and legs, but he would have been the last person in the world to call these bites, for he knew what real biting meant. "Arre, arre," said 2 or 3 women together. "To be bitten by wolves? Poor child! He's a handsome boy. He has eyes like red fire. By my honour, Meswa, he's not unlike thy boy that was taken by the tiger." "Let me look," said a woman with heavy copper rings on her wrists and ankles, and she peered at Mowgli under the palm of her hand. "Indeed he's not. He's thinner, but he has the very look of my boy." The priest was a clever man, and he knew that Meswa was wife to the richest villager in the place, so he looked up at the sky for a minute and said solemnly, "What the jungle has taken, the jungle has restored. Take the boy into thy house, my sister, and forget not to honour the priest who sees so far into the lives of men." "By the bull that bought me," said Mowgli to himself, "but all this talking is like another looking over by the pack. Well, if I am a man I must become." The crowd parted as the woman beckoned Mowgli to her hut. She gave him a long drink of milk and some bread, and then she laid her hand on his head and looked into his eyes, for she thought that perhaps he might be her real son come back from the jungle where the tiger had taken him. So she said, "Natu, oh Natu." Mowgli did not show that he knew the name. "Dost thou not remember the day when I gave thee new shoes?" She touched his foot, and it was almost as hard as horn. "No," she said sorrowfully. "Those feet have never worn shoes, but thou art very like my Natu, and thou shalt be my son." Mowgli was uneasy because he had never been under a roof before, but as he looked at the thatch, he saw that he could tear it out any time if he wanted to get away, and that the window had no fastenings. "What is the good of a man," he said to himself at last, "if he does not understand man's talk? Now, I am as silly and dumb as a man would be with us in the jungle. I must learn their talk." So, as soon as Meswa pronounced a word, Mowgli would imitate it almost perfectly, and before dark he had learned the names of many things in the hut. There was a difficulty at bedtime, because Mowgli would not sleep under anything that looked so like a panther trap as that hut, and when they shut the door, he went through the window. "Give him his will," said Meswa's husband. "Remember, he can never till now have slept on a bed. If he is indeed sent in the place of our son, He will not run away." So Mowgli stretched himself in some long, clean grass at the edge of the field, but before he closed his eyes, a soft grey nose poked him under the chin. "Phew!" said Grey Brother. He was the eldest of Mother Wolf's cubs. "This is a poor reward for following thee 20 miles. Huh? Thou smellest of wood smoke and cattle altogether like a man already. Wake, little brother, I bring news." "Are all well in the jungle?" said Mowgli, hugging him. "All except the wolves that were burned with the red flower. Now listen. Shirkhan has gone away to hunt far off till his coat grows again, for he's badly singed. When he returns, he swears that he will lay thy bones in the Wine-Gunga. There are 2 words to that. I also have made a little promise. But news is always good. I am tired tonight, very tired with new things, Grey Brother. But bring me the news always." "Thou wilt not forget that thou art a wolf. Men will not make thee forget," said Grey Brother anxiously. "Never. I will always remember that I love thee and all in our cave. But also I will always remember that I have been cast out of the pack. And that thou mayst be cast out of another pack. Men are only men, little brother, and their talk is like the talk of frogs in a pond. When I come down here again, I will wait for thee in the bamboos at the edge of the grazing ground." For 3 months after that night, Mowgli hardly ever left the village gate. He was so busy learning the ways and customs of men. First, he had to wear a cloth round him, which annoyed him horribly, and then he had to learn about money, which he did not in the least understand, and about ploughing, of which he did not see the use. He did not know his own strength in the least. In the jungle he knew he was weak compared with the beasts, but in the village people said that he was as strong as a bull. And Mowgli had not the faintest idea of the difference that caste makes between man and man. When the potter's donkey slipped in the clay pit, Mowgli hauled it out by the tail and helped to stack the pots for their journey to the market at Kanhiwara. That was very shocking too, for the potter is a low-caste man, and his donkey is worse. When the priest scolded him, Mowgli threatened to put him on the donkey too, and the priest told Meswar's husband that Mowgli had better be set to work as soon as possible, and the village headman told Mowgli that he would have to go out with the buffaloes next day and herd them while they grazed. No one was more pleased than Mowgli, and that night, because he had been appointed as it were a servant of the village, he went off to a circle that met every evening on a masonry platform under a great fig tree. It was the village club, and the headman and the watchman and the barber who knew all the gossip of the village, and old Buldeo, the village hunter who owned a tower musket, met and smoked. The monkeys sat and talked in the upper branches, and there was a hole under the platform where a cobra lived, and he had his little platter of milk every night because he was sacred, and the old men sat around the tree and talked and pulled at the big hookahs, the water pipes, till far into the night. They told wonderful tales of gods and men and ghosts, and Buldeo told even more wonderful ones of the ways of beasts in the jungle, till the eyes of the children sitting outside the circle bulged out of their heads. Most of the tales were about animals, for the jungle was always at their door. The deer and the wild pig grubbed up their crops, and now and again the tiger carried off a man at twilight within sight of the village gates. Mowgli, who naturally knew something about what they were talking of, had to cover his face not to show that he was laughing, while Buldeo, the tower musket across his knees, climbed on from one wonderful story to another, and Mowgli's shoulders shook. Buldeo was explaining how the tiger that had carried away Meswar's son was a ghost tiger, and his body was inhabited by the ghost of a wicked old moneylender who had died some years ago. "And I know that this is true," he said, "because Puran Das always limped from the blow that he got in a riot when his account books were burned. And the tiger that I speak of, he limps too, for the tracks of his pads are unequal." "True, true, that must be the truth," said the greybeards, nodding together. "Are all these tales such cobwebs and moon talk?" said Mowgli. That tiger limps because he was born lame, as everyone knows. To talk of the soul of a moneylender in a beast that never had the courage of a jackal is child's talk." Buldeo was speechless with surprise for a moment, and the head man stared. "Oho, it is the jungle brat, is it?" said Buldeo. "If thou art so wise, better bring his hide to Kanhivara, for the government has set 100 rupees on his life. Hey, better still, do not talk when thy elders speak." Mowgli rose to go. "All the evening I've lain here listening," he called back over his shoulder, "and except once or twice, Buldeo has not said one word of truth concerning the jungle which is at his very doors. How then shall I believe the tales of ghosts and gods and goblins which he says he has seen?" "It is full time that boy went to herding," said the head man, while Buldeo puffed and snorted at Mowgli's impertinence. The custom of most Indian villages is for a few boys to take the cattle and buffaloes out to graze in the early morning and bring them back at night. So long as the boys keep with the herds, they're safe, for not even the tiger will charge a mob of cattle. Mowgli went through the village street in the dawn, sitting on the back of Rama, the great herd bull, and the slaty blue buffaloes with their long backward-sweeping horns and savage eyes rose out of their byres one by one and followed him. An Indian grazing ground is all rocks and scrub and tussocks and little ravines, among which the herds scatter and disappear. The buffaloes generally keep to the pools and muddy places, where they lie wallowing or basking in the warm mud for hours. Mowgli drove them on to the edge of the plain where the Waingunga river came out of the jungle. Then he dropped from Rama's neck, trotted off to a bamboo clump, and found Grey Brother. "Ah," said Grey Brother, "I have waited here very many days. What is the meaning of this cattle-herding work?" "It is an order," said Mowgli. "I am a village herd for a while. What news of Shere Khan?" "He has come back to this country, and has waited here a long time for thee. Now he is gone off again, for the game is scarce, but he means to kill thee." "Very good," said Mowgli. "So long as he is away, do thou or one of the 4 brothers sit on that rock, so that I can see thee as I come out of the village. When he comes back, wait for me in the ravine by the dark tree in the centre of the plain. We need not walk into Shere Khan's mouth." Then Mowgli picked out a shady place and lay down and slept while the buffaloes grazed round him. Herding in India is one of the laziest things in the world. The cattle move and crunch and lie down and move on again, and they do not even low, they only grunt. And the buffaloes very seldom say anything, but get down into the muddy pools one after another, and work their way into the mud, till only their noses and staring china-blue eyes show above the surface, and there they lie like logs. The sun makes the rocks dance in the heat, and the herd children hear one kite, never any more, whistling almost out of sight overhead, and they know that if they died, or a cow died, that kite would sweep down, and the next kite miles away would see him drop and would follow, and the next, and almost before they were dead, there would be a score of hungry kites come out of nowhere. Then they sleep and wake and sleep again, and weave little baskets of dried grass, and put grasshoppers in them, or catch 2 praying mantis and make them fight, or string a necklace of red and black jungle nuts, or watch a lizard basking on a rock, or a snake hunting a frog near the wallows. Then they sing long, long songs with odd native quavers at the end of them, and the day seems longer than most people's whole lives. And perhaps they make a mud castle with mud figures of men and horses and buffaloes, and put reeds into the men's hands, and pretend that they're kings, and the figures are their armies, or that they're gods to be worshipped. Then evening comes, and the children call, and the buffaloes lumber up out of the sticky mud, with noises like gunshots going off one after the other, and they all string across the grey plain, back to the twinkling village lights. Day after day, Mowgli would lead the buffaloes out to their wallows, and day after day he would see Grey Brother's back 1.5 miles away across the plain. So he knew that Shere Khan had not come back, and day after day he would lie on the grass, listening to the noises round him and dreaming of old days in the jungle. At last, a day came when he did not see Grey Brother at the signal place, and he laughed and headed the buffaloes for the ravine by the dark tree, which was all covered with golden red flowers. There sat Grey Brother, every bristle on his back lifted. He has hidden for a month to throw thee off thy guard. He crossed the ranges last night with Tabaqui. Hot foot on thy trail, said the wolf, panting. Mowgli frowned. I'm not afraid of Shere Khan, but Tabaqui is very cunning. Have no fear, said Grey Brother, licking his lips a little. I met Tabaqui in the dawn. Now he's telling all his wisdom to the kites, but he told me everything before I broke his back. Shere Khan's plan is to wait for thee at the village gate this evening, for thee and for no one else. He's lying up now in the big dry ravine of the Wainganga. Has he eaten today, or does he hunt empty? Said Mowgli, for the answer meant life or death to him. He killed at dawn a pig, and he is drunk too. Remember, Shere Khan could never fast, even for the sake of revenge. Oh, fool, fool! What a cub's cub it is! Eaten and drunk too, and he thinks that I shall wait till he has slept, huh? Mowgli stood with his finger in his mouth, thinking. The big ravine of the Wainganga, that opens out on the plain not 1/2 mile from here. I can take the herd round, through the jungle to the head of the ravine, and then sweep down. But he would slink out at the foot. We must block that end. Grey Brother, canst thou cut the herd in two for me? Not I, perhaps, but I have brought a wise helper. Grey Brother trotted off and dropped into a hole. Then there lifted up a huge grey head that Mowgli knew well, and the hot air was filled with the most desolate cry of all the jungle, the hunting howl of a wolf at midday. Akela! Akela! Said Mowgli, clapping his hands. I might have known that thou wouldst not forget me. We have a big work in hand. Cut the herd in two, Akela. Keep the cows and calves together, and the bulls and the plough buffaloes by themselves. The two wolves ran ladies' chain fashion in and out of the herd, which snorted and threw up its head and separated into two clumps. In one, the cow buffaloes stood with their calves in the centre and glared and pawed, ready, if a wolf would only stay still, to charge down and trample the life out of him. In the other, the bulls and the young bulls snorted and stamped, but though they looked more imposing, they were much less dangerous, for they had no calves to protect. What orders? Panted Akela. They're trying to join again. Mowgli slipped onto Rama's back. Drive the bulls away to the left, Akela. Grey Brother, when we're gone, hold the cows together and drive them into the foot of the ravine. How far? Said Grey Brother, panting and snapping. Till the sides are higher than Shere Khan can jump, shouted Mowgli. Keep them there till we come down. The bulls swept off as Akela bayed, and Grey Brother stopped in front of the cows. They charged down on him, and he ran just before them to the foot of the ravine, as Akela drove the bulls far to the left. Well done! Another charge, and they're fairly started. Careful now, careful, Akela. A snap too much, and the bulls will charge. Hiya! Mowgli called. I have hunted these two in my time, gasped Akela in the dust. Shall I turn them into the jungle? Aye, turn, swiftly turn them. Rama is mad with rage. Oh, if I could only tell him what I need of him today. The bulls were turned to the right this time and crashed into the standing thicket. The other herd children, watching with their cattle 1/2 mile away, hurried to the village as fast as their legs could carry them, crying that the buffaloes had gone mad and run away. But Mowgli's plan was simple enough. All he wanted to do was to make a big circle uphill and get at the head of the ravine, and then take the bulls down it and catch Shere Khan between the bulls and the cows. For he knew that after a meal and a full drink, Shere Khan would not be in any condition to fight or to clamber up the sides of the ravine. He was soothing the buffaloes now by voice, and Akela had dropped far to the rear, only whimpering once or twice to hurry the rear guard. It was a long, long circle, for they did not wish to get too near the ravine and give Shere Khan warning. At last, Mowgli rounded up the bewildered herd at the head of the ravine on a grassy patch that sloped steeply down to the ravine itself. From that height, you could see across the tops of the trees down to the plain below, but what Mowgli looked at was the sides of the ravine, and he saw with a great deal of satisfaction that they ran nearly straight up and down, while the vines and creepers that hung over them would give no foothold to a tiger who wanted to get out. "Let them breathe, Akela," he said, holding up his hand. "They have not winded him yet. Let them breathe. I must tell Shere Khan who comes. We have him in the trap." He put his hands to his mouth and shouted down the ravine. It was almost like shouting down a tunnel, and the echoes jumped from rock to rock. After a long time there came back the drawling, sleepy snarl of a full-fed tiger just wakened. "Who calls?" said Shere Khan, and a splendid peacock fluttered up out of the ravine, screeching. "I, Mowgli! Cattle thief, it is time to come to the council rock. Down, hurry them down, Akela! Down, Rama! Down!" The herd paused for an instant at the edge of the slope, but Akela gave tongue in the full hunting yell, and they pitched over one after the other, just as steamers shoot rapids, the sand and stones spurting up round them. Once started, there was no chance of stopping, and before they were fairly in the bed of the ravine, Rama winded Shere Khan and bellowed. "Ha! Ha!" said Mowgli on his back. "Now thou knowest!" And the torrent of black horns, foaming muzzles and staring eyes, whirled down the ravine like boulders in flood time. The weaker buffaloes being shouldered out to the sides of the ravine, where they tore through the creepers. They knew what the business was before them, the terrible charge of the buffalo herd, against which no tiger can hope to stand. Shere Khan heard the thunder of their hoofs, picked himself up and lumbered down the ravine, looking from side to side for some way of escape, but the walls of the ravine were straight, and he had to keep on, heavy with his dinner and his drink, willing to do anything rather than fight. The herd splashed through the pool he had just left, bellowing till the narrow cut rang. Mowgli heard an answering bellow from the foot of the ravine, saw Shere Khan turn. The tiger knew if the worst came to the worst, it was better to meet the bulls than the cows with their calves. And then Rama tripped, stumbled, and went on again over something soft, and with the bulls at his heels, crashed full into the other herd, while the weaker buffaloes were lifted clean off their feet by the shock of the meeting. That charge carried both herds out into the plain, goring and stamping and snorting. Mowgli watched his time and slipped off Rama's neck, laying about him right and left with his stick. "Quick, Akela! Break them up! Scatter them, or they'll be fighting one another! Drive them away, Akela! Hi, Rama! Hi, 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 my children! Softly now, softly! It is all over." Akela and Grey Brother ran to and fro, nipping the buffalo's legs, and though the herd wheeled once to charge up the ravine again, Mowgli managed to turn Rama, and the others followed him to the wallows. Shere Khan needed no more trampling. He was dead, and the kites were coming for him already. "Brothers, that was a dog's death," said Mowgli, feeling for the knife he always carried in a sheath round his neck now that he lived with men. "His hide will look well on the Council Rock. We must get to work swiftly." A boy trained among men would never have dreamed of skinning a 10-foot tiger alone, but Mowgli knew better than anyone else how an animal's skin is fitted on and how it can be taken off. But it was hard work, and Mowgli slashed and tore and grunted for an hour, while the wolves lolled out their tongues or came forward and tugged as he ordered them. Presently a hand fell on his shoulder, and looking up, he saw Buldeo with a tar musket. The children had told the village about the buffalo stampede, and Buldeo went out angrily, only too anxious to correct Mowgli for not taking better care of the herd. "What is this folly?" said Buldeo angrily. "To think that thou canst skin a tiger! Where did the buffaloes kill him? It is a lame tiger too, and there is 100 rupees on his head. Well, well, we will overlook thy letting the herd run off, and perhaps I will give thee 1 of the rupees of the reward when I have taken the skin to Kanhiwara." "Hum," said Mowgli, half to himself, as he ripped back the skin of a forepaw. "So thou wilt take the hide to Kanhiwara for the reward, and perhaps give me 1 rupee. Now it is in my mind that I need the skin for my own use." "Eh? What talk is this to the chief hunter of the village? Thy luck and the stupidity of thy buffaloes have helped thee to this skill. The tiger has just fed, or he would have gone 20 miles by this time. Mowgli, I will not give thee 1 anna of the reward, but only a very big beating. Now leave the carcass." "By the bull that bought me," said Mowgli, who was trying to get at the shoulder, "must I stay babbling to an old ape all noon? Here, Akela, this man plagues me." Buldeo, who was still stooping over Shirkhan's head, found himself sprawling on the grass, with a grey wolf standing over him, while Mowgli went on skinning as though he were alone in all India. "Yes," he said between his teeth, "thou art altogether right, Buldeo. Thou wilt never give me 1 anna of the reward. There is an old war between this lame tiger and myself, a very old war, and I have won." To do Buldeo justice, if he had been 10 years younger, he would have taken his chance with Akela, had he met the wolf in the woods. But a wolf who obeyed the orders of this boy, who had private wars with man-eating tigers, was not a common animal. It was sorcery, magic of the worst kind, thought Buldeo, and he wondered whether the amulet round his neck would protect him. He lay as still, expecting every minute to see Mowgli turn into a tiger too. "Maharaj, great king," he said at last in a husky whisper. "Yes," said Mowgli, without turning his head, chuckling a little. "I am an old man. I did not know that thou wast anything more than a herd's boy. May I rise up and go away, or will thy servant tear me to pieces?" "Go, and peace go with thee. Only another time do not meddle with my game. Let him go, Akela." Buldeo hobbled away to the village as fast as he could, looking back over his shoulder in case Mowgli should change into something terrible. When he got to the village, he told a tale of magic and enchantment and sorcery that made the priest look very grave. Mowgli went on with his work, but it was nearly twilight before he and the wolves had drawn the great gay skin clear of the body. "Now we must hide this and take the buffaloes home. Help me to herd them, Akela." The herd rounded up in the misty twilight, and when they got near the village, Mowgli saw lights and heard the conches and bells in the temple blowing and banging. Half the village seemed to be waiting for him by the gate. "Oh, that is because I've killed Shirkhan," he said to himself. But a shower of stones whistled about his ears, and the villagers shouted, "Sorcerer! Wolf's brat! Jungle demon! Go away! Shoot, Buldeo! Shoot!" The old tar musket went off with a bang, and a young buffalo bellowed in pain. More sorcery, shouted the villagers. He can turn bullets. Buldu, that was thy buffalo. Now what is this? Said Mowgli, bewildered as the stones flew thicker. They are not unlike the pack, these brothers of thine, said Akela, sitting down composedly. It is in my head that if bullets mean anything, they would cast thee out. Wolf, wolf's cub, go away, shouted the priest, waving a sprig of the sacred tulsi plant. Again? Last time it was because I was a man. This time it is because I'm a wolf. Let us go, Akela. A woman, it was Meswa, ran across to the herd and cried, "Oh, my son, they say thou art a sorcerer who can turn himself into a beast at will. I do not believe, but go away, or they will kill thee. Buldu says thou art a wizard, but I know thou hast avenged Nathu's death."
"Come back, Meswa," shouted the crowd. "Come back, or we will stone thee."
Mowgli laughed a little short, ugly laugh, for a stone had hit him in the mouth. "Run back, Meswa. This is one of the foolish tales they tell under the big tree at dusk. I have at least paid for thy son's life. Farewell, and run quickly, for I shall send the herd in more swiftly than their brickbats. I'm no wizard, Meswa. Farewell." "Now, once more, Akela," he cried. "Bring the herd in." The buffaloes were anxious enough to get to the village. They hardly needed Akela's yell, but charged through the gate like a whirlwind, scattering the crowd right and left. "Keep count," shouted Mowgli scornfully. "Keep count, for I will do your herding no more. Fare ye well, children of men, and thank Meswa that I do not come in with my wolves and hunt you up and down your street." He turned on his heel and walked away with the lone wolf, and as he looked up at the stars, he felt happy. "No more sleeping in traps for me, Akela. Let us get Shere Khan's skin and go away. No, we will not hurt the village, for Meswa was kind to me." When the moon rose over the plain, making it look all milky, the horrified villagers saw Mowgli, with 2 wolves at his heels and a bundle on his head, trotting across at the steady wolf's trot that eats up the long miles like fire. Then they banged the temple bells and blew the conches louder than ever, and Meswa cried, and Buldu embroidered the story of his adventures in the jungle till he ended by saying that Akela stood up on his hind legs and talked like a man. The moon was just going down when Mowgli and the 2 wolves came to the hill of the Council Rock, and they stopped at Mother Wolf's cave. "They've cast me out from the man-pack, Mother," shouted Mowgli. "But I come with the hide of Shere Khan to keep my word." Mother Wolf walked stiffly from the cave with the cubs behind her, and her eyes glowed as she saw the skin. "I told him on that day when he crammed his head and shoulders into this cave, hunting for thy life, little frog, I told him that the hunter would be the hunted. It is well done. Little brother, it is well done. We were lonely in the jungle without thee," said Bagheera, who came running to Mowgli's bare feet. They clambered up the Council Rock together, and Mowgli spread the skin out on the flat stone where Akela used to sit, and pegged it down with 4 slivers of bamboo, and Akela lay down upon it and called the old call to the council. "Look! Look well, O wolves!" Exactly as he had called when Mowgli was first brought there. Ever since Akela had been deposed, the pack had been without a leader, hunting and fighting at their own pleasure. But they answered the call from habit, and some of them were lame from the traps they had fallen into, and some limped from shot wounds, and some were mangy from eating bad food, and many were missing. But they came to the council rock, all that were left of them, and saw Shere Khan's striped hide on the rock, and the huge claws dangling at the end of the empty, dangling feet. "Look well, O wolves! Have I kept my word?" said Mowgli. And the wolves bayed, "Yes." And one tattered wolf howled, "Lead us again, O Akela! Lead us again, O man-cub, for we be sick of this lawlessness, and we would be the free people once more. Ow!" "Nay," purred Bagheera, "that may not be. When ye are full-fed, the madness may come upon ye again. Not for nothing are ye called the free people. Ye fought for freedom, and it is yours. Eat it, O wolves." "Man-pack and wolf-pack have cast me out," said Mowgli. "Now I will hunt alone in the jungle." "And we will hunt with thee," said the 4 cubs. So Mowgli went away and hunted with the 4 cubs in the jungle from that day on. But he was not always alone, because years afterwards he became a man and married. But that is a story for grown-ups. Letting in the jungle. You will remember that after Mowgli had pinned Shere Khan's hide to the council rock, he told as many as were left of the Seoni pack that henceforward he would hunt in the jungle alone, and the 4 children of Mother and Father Wolf said that they would hunt with him. But it is not easy to change one's life all in a minute, particularly in the jungle. The first thing Mowgli did when the disorderly pack had slunk off was to go to the home cave and sleep for a day and a night. Then he told Mother Wolf and Father Wolf as much as they could understand of his adventures among men. It was long after sunrise, but no one dreamed of going to sleep, and from time to time during the talk, Mother Wolf would throw up her head and sniff a deep snuff of satisfaction as the wind brought her the smell of the tiger skin on the council rock. "But for Akela and Grey Brother here," Mowgli said at the end, "I could have done nothing. Oh, Mother, Mother, if thou had seen the black herd bulls pour down the ravine or hurry through the gates when the man-pack flung stones at me." "I'm glad I did not see that last," said Mother Wolf stiffly. "It is not my custom to suffer my cubs to be driven to and fro like jackals. I would have taken a price from the man-pack, but I would have spared the woman who gave thee the milk. Yes, I would have spared her alone." "Peace, peace, Raksha," said Father Wolf lazily. "Our frog has come back again. Leave men alone. Ow!" Baloo and Bagheera both echoed, "Leave men alone." Mowgli, his head on Mother Wolf's side, smiled contentedly, and said that for his own part he never wished to see or hear or smell man again. "But what," said Akela, cocking one ear, "but what if men do not leave thee alone, little brother?" Bagheera sprang to his feet, thrust up his head as far as he could, sniffed, and stiffened through every curve in his body. Grey Brother followed his example quickly, keeping a little to his left to get the wind that was blowing from the right, while Akela bounded 50 yards upwind and, half crouching, stiffened too. "Man!" Akela growled, dropping on his haunches. "Buldoo," said Mowgli, sitting down. "He follows our trail, and yonder is the sunlight on his gun. Look!" "I knew men would follow," said Akela triumphantly. "Not for nothing have I led the pack." Mowgli cut across noiselessly through the jungle at right angles to Buldoo's path, till, parting the undergrowth, he saw the old man, his musket on his shoulder, running up the trail of overnight at a dog trot. You'll remember that Mowgli had left the village with a heavy weight of Shere Khan's raw hide on his shoulders, while Akela and Grey Brother trotted behind, so that the triple trail was very clearly marked. Presently, Buldoo came to where Akela had gone back and mixed it all up. Then he sat down and coughed and grunted and made little casts round and about into the jungle to pick it up again, and all the time he could have thrown a stone over those who were watching him. No one can be so silent as a wolf when he does not care to be heard, and Mowgli could come and go like a shadow. They ringed the old man as a school of porpoises ring a steamer at full speed, and as they ringed him they talked unconcernedly, for their speech began below the lowest end of the scale that untrained human beings can hear. "What does he say?" said Grey Brother. Buldoo was muttering savagely. Mowgli translated. "He says that packs of wolves must have danced round me. He says that he never saw such a trail in his life. Oh, he says he's tired." "He will be rested before he picks it up again," said Bagheera coolly. "Now, what does the lean thing do?" "Eat, or blow smoke out of his mouth. Men always play with their mouths," said Mowgli. And the silent trailers saw the old man fill and light and puff at a water pipe, and they took good note of the smell of the tobacco, so as to be sure of Buldoo in the darkest night if necessary. Then a little knot of charcoal burners came down the path, while Buldoo began to tell the story of Mowgli, the devil child, from one end to another, with additions and inventions. But meantime the village had got hold of Meswa and her husband, who were undoubtedly the father and mother of this devil child, and had barricaded them in their own hut, and presently would torture them to make them confess they were witch and wizard, and then they would be burned to death. "What says he? What says he?" the wolves repeated every few minutes, and Mowgli translated until he came to the witch part of the story, which was a little beyond him, and then he said that the man and woman who had been so kind to him were trapped. "Does man trap man?" said Bagheera. "So he says. I cannot understand the talk. They're all mad together. What have Meswa and her man to do with me, that they should be put in a trap? And what is all this talk about the red flower? I must look to this. Whatever they will do to Meswa, they will not do till Buldoo returns. And so—" Mowgli thought hard, with his fingers playing round the haft of the skinning knife, while Buldoo and the charcoal burners went off very valiantly in single file. "I go hot-foot back to the man-pack," Mowgli said at last. "And those?" said Grey Brother, looking hungrily after the brown backs of the charcoal burners. "Sing them home," said Mowgli with a grin. "I do not wish them to be at the village gates till it is dark. Go with them, Bagheera, and help make that song. When night is shut down, meet me by the village. Grey Brother knows the place." Mowgli was putting the miles behind him, 9 to the hour, swinging on, delighted to find himself so fit after all his cramped months among men. The one idea in his head was to get Meswa and her husband out of the trap, whatever it was, for he had a natural mistrust of traps. Later on, he promised himself, he would pay his debts to the village at large. It was at twilight when he saw the well-remembered grazing grounds and the dark tree where Grey Brother had waited for him on the morning that he killed Shere Khan. Angry as he was at the whole breed and community of man, something jumped up in his throat and made him catch his breath when he looked at the village roofs. he noticed that everyone had come in from the fields unusually early, and that instead of getting to their evening cooking, they gathered in a crowd under the village tree and chattered and shouted. He crept along outside the wall till he came to Mesroir's hut and looked through the window into the room. There lay Mesroir, gagged and bound hand and foot, breathing hard and groaning. Her husband was tied to the gaily painted bedstead. The door of the hut that opened into the street was shut fast, and 3 or 4 people were sitting with their backs to it. Mowgli knew the manners and customs of the villagers very fairly. He argued that so long as they could eat and talk and smoke, they would not do anything else, but as soon as they had fed, they would begin to be dangerous. Buldeo would be coming in before long, and if his escort had done its duty, Buldeo would have a very interesting tale to tell. So he went in through the window, and stooping over the man and the woman, cut their thongs, pulling out the gags, and looked round the hut for some milk. Mesroir was half wild with pain and fear. She had been beaten and stoned all the morning, and Mowgli put his hand over her mouth just in time to stop a scream. I knew he would come," Mesroir sobbed at last. "Now do I know that he is my son," and she hugged Mowgli to her heart. Up to that time Mowgli had been perfectly steady, but now he began to tremble all over, and that surprised him immensely. "Why are these thongs? Why have they tied thee?" he asked after a pause. Mesroir said nothing, but it was at her wounds that Mowgli looked, and they heard him grit his teeth when he saw the blood. "Whose work is this?" said he. "There is a price to pay." "The work of all the village. I gave thee milk, Natu. Dost thou remember?" Mesroir said timidly. "Because thou wast my son whom the tiger took, and because I loved thee very dearly. They said that I was thy mother, the mother of a devil, and therefore worthy of death." "And what is a devil?" said Mowgli. "Death I have seen." The man looked up gloomily, but Mesroir laughed. "See," she said to her husband, "I knew. I said that he was no sorcerer. He is my son, my son." "Yonder is the road to the jungle," Mowgli pointed through the window. "Your hands and feet are free. Go now." "We do not know the jungle, my son, as thou knowest," Mesroir began. "I do not think that I could walk far." Said Mowgli. "I have no wish to do harm to any one of this village, yet. But I do not think they will stay thee. In a little while they will have much else to think upon." "Ah!" He lifted his head and listened to shouting and trampling outside. "So they have let Buldeo come home at last." "He was sent out this morning to kill thee," Mesroir cried. "Didst thou meet him?" "Yes. I met him. He has a tale to tell, and while he is telling it, there is time to do much. But first I will learn what they mean. Think where ye would go, and tell me when I come back." He bounded through the window and ran along again outside the wall of the village till he came within earshot of the crowd round the peepul tree. Buldeo was lying on the ground, coughing and groaning, and everyone was asking him questions. His hair had fallen about his shoulders, his hands and legs were skinned from climbing up trees, and he could hardly speak. But he felt the importance of his position keenly. From time to time he said something about devils and singing devils and magic enchantment, just to give the crowd a taste of what was coming. Then he called for water. "Bah!" said Mowgli. "Chatter, chatter, talk, talk. Men are blood brothers of the Bandarlog." He shook himself and glided back to the hut. Just as he was at the window, he felt a touch on his foot. "Mother," said he, for he knew that tongue well, "what dost thou here?" "I heard my children singing through the woods, and I followed the one I loved best. Little Frog, I have a desire to see that woman who gave thee milk," said Mother Wolf, all wet with the dew. "They have bound and mean to kill her. I have cut those ties, and she goes with her man through the jungle." "I also will follow. I'm old, but not yet toothless." Mother Wolf reared herself up on end and looked through the window into the dark of the hut. In a minute she dropped noiselessly, and all she said was, "I gave thee thy first milk, but Bagheera speaks truth. Man goes to man at the last." "Maybe," said Mowgli with a very unpleasant look on his face, "but tonight I'm very far from that trail. Wait here, but do not let her see." "Thou wast never afraid of me, Little Frog," said Mother Wolf. backing into the high grass and blotting herself out as she knew how. "And now," said Mowgli cheerfully as he swung into the hut again, "they're all sitting round Buldeo, who's saying that which did not happen. When his talk is finished, they say they will assuredly come here with the red, with fire, and burn you both. And then—" I have spoken to my man," said Meswa. "Kanhiwara is 30 miles from here. If we can get thither tonight, we live. Otherwise we die." "Live, then. No man passes the gates tonight." Mowgli helped Meswa through the window, and the cool night air revived her, but the jungle in the starlight looked very dark and terrible. "Ye know the trail to Kanhiwara?" Mowgli whispered. They nodded. "Good. Remember now not to be afraid, and there is no need to go quickly, only there may be some small singing in the jungle behind you and before." "Think you we would have risked a night in the jungle through anything less than the fear of burning? It is better to be killed by beasts than by men," said Meswa's husband. But Meswa looked at Mowgli and smiled. "I say," Mowgli went on, just as though he were Baloo repeating an old jungle law for the 100th time to a foolish cub, "I say that not a tooth in the jungle is bared against you, not a foot in the jungle is lifted against you, neither man nor beast shall stay you till you come within eyeshot of Kanhiwara. There will be a watch about you." Meswa flung herself sobbing at Mowgli's feet, but he lifted her very quickly with a shiver. Then she hung about his neck and called him every name of blessing she could think of. They went off towards the jungle, and Mother Wolf leaped from her place of hiding. "Follow," said Mowgli, "and look to it that all the jungle knows these two are safe. Give tongue a little. I would call Bagheera." The long, low howl rose and fell, and Mowgli saw Meswa's husband flinch and turn, half-minded to run back to the hut. "Go on," Mowgli shouted cheerfully. "I said there might be singing. That call will follow up to Kanhiwara. It is the favor of the jungle." Meswa urged her husband forward, and the darkness shut down on them and Mother Wolf, as Bagheera rose up almost under Mowgli's feet, trembling with delight of the night that drives the jungle people wild. "Is it killing at last? The singing and the sight of the men climbing up the trees have made me very ready. Who is man that we should care for him, the naked brown digger, the hairless and toothless, the eater of earth? I am Bagheera, Bagheera, Bagheera. As I dance with my shadow, so I danced with those men. Look!" The great panther leaped as a kitten leaps at a dead leaf whirling overhead, struck left and right into the empty air that sung under the strokes, landed noiselessly, and leaped again and again, while the half-purr, half-growl gathered head as steam rumbles in a boiler. "I am Bagheera, in the jungle, in the night, and my strength is in me. Who shall stay my stroke? Man-cub, with one blow of my paw I could beat thy head flat as a dead frog in the summer." "Strike, then," said Mowgli, in the dialect of the village, not the talk of the jungle. And the human words brought Bagheera to a full stop, flung back on his haunches that quivered under him, his head just at the level of Mowgli's. Once more Mowgli stared, as he had stared at the rebellious cubs, full into the beryl-green eyes, till the red glare behind their green went out like the light of a lighthouse shut off 20 miles across the sea, till the eyes dropped and the big head with them dropped lower and lower, and the red rasp of a tongue grated on Mowgli's instep. "Brother, brother, brother," the boy whispered, stroking steadily and lightly from the neck along the heaving back. "Be still, be still. It is the fault of the night, no fault of thine." It was the smells of the night, said Bagheera penitently. This air cries aloud to me. But how dost thou know? Of course, the air round an Indian village is full of all kinds of smells, and to any creature who does nearly all his thinking through his nose, smells are as maddening as music and drugs are to human beings. Mowgli gentled the panther for a few minutes longer, and he lay down like a cat before a fire, his paws tucked under his breast and his eyes half shut. Thou art of the jungle, and not of the jungle, he said at last, and I am only a black panther. But I love thee, little brother. They're very long at their talk under the tree, Mowgli said, without noticing the last sentence. Buldeo must have told many tales. They should come soon to drag the woman and her man out of the trap and put them into the red flower. They will find that trap sprung. Ho ho! Nay, listen, said Bagheera. The fever is out of my blood now. Let them find me there. By the broken lock that freed me, they will think they have caught big game. Come and sit beside me, little brother. We will give them good hunting together. No, I have another thought in my stomach. The man-pack shall not know what share I have in the sport. Make thine own hunt. I do not wish to see them. Be it so, said Bagheera. Ah, now they come. There was some little difficulty with the catch of the door. It had been very firmly fastened, but the crowd tore it away bodily, and the light of the torches streamed into the room where, stretched at full length on the bed, his paws crossed and lightly hung down over one end, black as the pit and terrible as a demon, was Bagheera. There was 1/2 minute of desperate silence as the front ranks of the crowd clawed and tore their way back from the threshold, and in that minute Bagheera raised his head and yawned, elaborately, carefully, and ostentatiously, as he would yawn when he wished to insult an equal. The fringed lips drew back and up, the red tongue curled, the lower jaw dropped and dropped till you could see halfway down the hot gullet, and the gigantic dog teeth stood clear to the pit of the gums till they rang together upper and under with the snick of steel-faced wards shooting home round the edges of a safe. Next instant the street was empty. Bagheera had leaped back through the window and stood at Mowgli's side, while a yelling, screaming torrent scrambled and tumbled over one another in their panic haste to get to their own huts. They will not stir till day comes, said Bagheera quietly. Mowgli ran off into the jungle and dropped across a rock and slept the day round and the night back again. The man and thy woman came safe within eyeshot of Kanhiwara, Bagheera said. Thy mother sent the word back by Cheel. They found a horse before midnight of the night they were freed, and went very quickly. Is not that well? That is well, said Mowgli. And thy man-pack in the village did not stir till the sun was high this morning. Then they ate their food and ran back quickly to their houses. Did they by chance see thee? It may have been. I was rolling in the dust before the gate at dawn, and I may have made also some small song to myself. Now, little brother, there is nothing more to do. Come hunting with me and Baloo. Let us forget the man-pack. They shall be forgotten in a little while. Where does Hathi feed tonight? Where he chooses. Who can answer for the Silent One? But why? What is there Hathi can do which we cannot? Bid him and his 3 sons come here to me, and if he does not hear at first, bid him come because of the sack of the fields of Bharatpur. The sack of the fields of Bharatpur, Bagheera repeated 2 or 3 times to make sure. I go. Mowgli had never seen human blood in his life before, till he had seen, and what meant much more to him, smelled Messua's blood on the thongs that bound her. And Messua had been kind to him, and so far as he knew anything about love, he loved Messua as completely as he hated the rest of mankind. But deeply as he loathed them, their talk, their cruelty, and their cowardice, not for anything the jungle had to offer could he bring himself to take a human life and have that terrible scent of blood back again in his nostrils. His plan was simpler, but much more thorough, and he laughed to himself when he thought that it was one of old Buldew's tales told under the peepul tree in the evening that had put the idea into his head. Hathi and his 3 sons had arrived in their usual way without a sound. Mowgli hardly lifted his head as Hathi gave him good hunting. He kept him swinging and rocking and shifting from one foot to another for a long time before he spoke, and when he opened his mouth it was to Bagheera, not to the elephants. "I will tell a tale that was told to me by the hunter ye hunted today," said Mowgli. "It concerns an elephant, old and wise, who fell into a trap, and the sharpened stake in the pit scarred him from a little above his heel to the crest of his shoulder, leaving a white mark." Mowgli threw out his hand, and as Hathi wheeled, the moonlight showed a long white scar on his slaty side, as though he'd been struck with a red-hot whip. "Men came to take him from the trap," Mowgli continued, "but he broke his ropes, for he was strong, and went away till his wound was healed. Then came he, angry, by night to the fields of those hunters, and I remember now that he had 3 sons. These things happened many, many rains ago, and very far away, among the fields of Bharatpur. What came to those fields at the next reaping, Hathi?" "They were reaped by me and by my 3 sons," said Hathi. "And to the ploughing that follows the reaping?" said Mowgli. "There was no ploughing," said Hathi. "And to the men that live by the green crops on the ground?" said Mowgli. "They went away." "And to the huts in which the men slept?" said Mowgli. "We tore the roofs to pieces, and the jungle swallowed up the walls," said Hathi. "It was well done, Hathi with the white mark, but the second time it shall be done better, for the reason that there is a man to direct. Thou knowest the village of the man-pack that cast me out? They are idle, senseless, and cruel. They play with their mouths, and they do not kill the weaker for food, but for sport. When they are full fed, they would throw their own breed into the red flour. This have I seen. It is not well that they should live here any more. Let in the jungle upon that village, Hathi." Bagheera shivered and cowered down. He could understand, if the worst came to the worst, a quick rush down the village street and a right and left blow into a crowd, or a crafty killing of men as they ploughed in the twilight. But this scheme for deliberately blotting out an entire village from the eyes of man and beast frightened him. Now he saw why Mowgli had sent for Hathi. No one but the long-lived elephant could plan and carry through such a war. "Let in the jungle, Hathi!" "There will be no killing. My tusks were red at the sack of the fields of Bharatpur, and I would not wake that smell again." "Nor I. I have seen and smelled the blood of the woman that gave me food, the woman whom they would have killed but for me. Only the smell of the new grass on their doorsteps can take away that smell. It burns in my mouth. Let in the jungle, Hathi!" "Ah," said Hathi, "so did the scar of the stake burn on my hide. Now I see. Thy war shall be our war. We will let in the jungle." Mowgli had hardly time to catch his breath. He was shaking all over with rage and hate before the place where the elephants had stood was empty, and Bagheera was looking at him with terror. "By the broken lock that freed me," said the Black Panther at last, "art thou the naked thing I spoke for in the pack when all was young?" By this time Hathi and his 3 sons had turned each to one point of the compass, and were striding silently down the valleys a mile away. They went on and on for 2 days' march, that is to say, a long 60 miles through the jungle. With every step they took and every wave of their trunks was known and noted and talked over by Mung and Cheel and the monkey people and all the birds. Then they began to feed, and fed quietly for a week or so. Hathi and his sons are like Kaa, the rock python. They never hurry till they have to. At the end of that time, and none knew who had started it, a rumour went through the jungle that there was better food and water to be found in such and such a valley. The pig, who of course will go to the ends of the earth for a full meal, moved first by companies, scuffling over the rocks, and the deer followed, with the little wild foxes that live on the dead and dying of the herds. And the heavy-shouldered Nilgai moved parallel with the deer, and the wild buffaloes of the swamps came after the Nilgai. The least little thing would have turned the scattered, straggling droves that grazed and sauntered and drank and grazed again. But whenever there was an alarm, somebody would rise up and soothe them. At one time it would be Ikki, the porcupine, full of news of good feed just a little farther on. At another, Mung would cry cheerily and flap down a glade to show it was all empty. Or Baloo, his mouth full of roots, would shamble alongside a wavering line and, half frightened, half romp it clumsily back to the proper road. Very many creatures broke back or ran away or lost interest, but very many were left to go forward. At the end of another 10 days or so, the situation was this. The deer and the pig and the Nilgai were milling round and round in a circle of 8 or 10 miles radius, while the eaters of flesh skirmished round its edge, and the centre of that circle was the village. It was a dark night when Hathi and his 3 sons slipped down from the jungle. When the villagers looked in the morning, they saw their crops were lost, and that meant death if they did not get away, for they lived year in and year out as near to starvation as the jungle was near to them. But it is hard to tear a village from its moorings. They stayed on as long as any summer food was left to them, and they tried to gather nuts in the jungle, but shadows with glaring eyes watched them and rolled before them even at midday, and when they ran back afraid to their walls, on the tree trunks they had passed not 5 minutes before, the bark would be stripped and chiselled with the stroke of some great taloned paw. The more they kept to their village, the bolder grew the wild things that gambolled and bellowed on the grazing grounds by the Wainganga. They had no time to patch and plaster the rear walls of the empty byres that backed on to the jungle. The wild pig trampled them down, and the knotty-rooted vines hurried after and threw their elbows over the new-won ground, and the coarse grass bristled behind the vines like the lances of a goblin army following a retreat. The unmarried men ran away first and carried the news far and near that the village was doomed. The crop on the ground and the seed in the ground had been taken. The outlying fields were already losing their shape, and it was time to throw themselves on the charity at Kanhiwara. They delayed their departure from one day to another till the first rains caught them, and the unmended roofs let in a flood, and the grazing ground stood ankle deep, and all life came on with a rush after the heat of the summer. Then they waded out, men, women, and children, through the blinding hot rain of the morning, but turned naturally for one farewell look at their homes. They heard, as the last burdened family filed through the gate, a crash of falling beams and thatch behind the walls. They saw a shiny, snaky black trunk lifted for an instant, scattering sodden thatch. It disappeared. And there was another crash, followed by a squeal. Hathi had been plucking off the roofs of the huts, as you pluck water lilies, and a rebounding beam had pricked him. He needed only this to unchain his full strength. For of all things in the jungle, the wild elephant enraged is the most wantonly destructive. He kicked backward at a mud wall that crumbled at the stroke, and crumbling melted to yellow mud under the torrents of rain. Then he wheeled and squealed and tore through the narrow streets, leaning against the huts right and left, shivering the crazy doors and crumpling up the eaves, while his 3 sons raged behind, as they had raged at the sack of the fields of Bharatpur. To the outer wall, children, with the head! Together, now! The 4 pushed side by side, the outer wall bulged, split, and fell. And the villagers, dumb with horror, saw the savage, clay-streaked heads of the wreckers in the ragged gap. Then they fled houseless and foodless down the valley as their village shredded and tossed and trampled, melted behind them. A month later, the place was a dimpled mound, covered with soft green young stuff, and by the end of the rains, there was the roaring jungle in full blast on the spot that had been under plough not 6 months before. The King's Anchors. Kaa, the big rock python, had changed his skin for perhaps the 200th time since his birth, and Mowgli went to congratulate him. Skin changing always makes a snake moody and depressed, till the new skin begins to shine and look beautiful. Kaa never made fun of Mowgli any more, but accepted him as the other jungle people did for the master of the jungle, and brought him all the news that a python of his size would naturally hear. That afternoon, Mowgli was sitting in the circle of Kaa's coils, fingering the flaked and broken old skin that lay all looped and twisted among the rocks, just as Kaa had left it. "Even to the scales of the eyes it is perfect," said Mowgli under his breath, playing with the old skin. "Strange to see the covering of one's own head at one's own feet. How looks the new coat?" Mowgli ran his hand down the diagonal checkerings of the immense back. "It is very beautiful to see, like the mottling in the mouth of a lily." "It needs water. A new skin never comes to full colour before the first bath. Let us go bathe." "I will carry thee," said Mowgli, and he stooped down, laughing, to lift the middle section of Kaa's great body, just where the barrel was thickest. A man might just as well have tried to heave up a 2-foot water main, and Kaa lay still, puffing with quiet amusement. Mowgli rose with his fingers full of grass and followed Kaa to the wise snake's pet bathing place, a deep, pitchy black pool surrounded with rocks and made interesting by sunken tree stumps. The boy slipped in jungle fashion without a sound, and Kaa's diamond-shaped head cut the pool like a razor and came out to rest on Mowgli's shoulder. They lay still, soaking luxuriously in the cool water. "It is very good," said Mowgli at last, sleepily. "Now, in the man-pack at this hour, as I remember, they laid them down upon hard pieces of wood in the inside of a mud-trap, and having carefully shut out all the clean winds, drew foul cloth over their heavy heads, and made evil songs through their noses. It is better in the jungle." "Shh," said Kaa, as though he had suddenly remembered something. "So the jungle gives thee all that thou hast ever desired, little brother. Thou hast no other desire?" the big snake demanded. "What more can I wish? I have the jungle and the favour of the jungle. Is there more anywhere between sunrise and sunset?" Kaa rolled slowly in the water like a steamer in a beam sea. "3 or 4 moons since," said he, "I hunted in coal lairs, coming at last upon a white cobra, who spoke of things beyond my knowledge and showed me many things I had never before seen." "New game? Was it good hunting? Mowgli turned quickly on his side. It was no game, and would have broken all my teeth, but the White Hood said that a man, he spoke as one that knew the breed, that a man would give the hot breath under his ribs for only the sight of those things. We will look, said Mowgli. I now remember that I was once a man. Mowgli swam to bank, rolled on the grass to dry himself, and the two set off for Coal Lairs, the deserted city of which you may have heard. Mowgli was not the least afraid of the monkey people in those days, but the monkey people had the liveliest horror of Mowgli. Their tribes, however, were raiding in the jungle, and so Coal Lairs stood empty and silent in the moonlight. Kaa led up to the ruins of the Queen's pavilion that stood on the terrace, slipped over the rubbish, and dived down the half-choked staircase that went underground from the centre of the pavilion. Mowgli gave the snake call and followed on his hands and knees. They crawled a long distance down a sloping passage that turned and twisted several times, and at last came to where the root of some great tree, growing 30 feet overhead, had forced out a solid stone in the wall. They crept through the gap and found themselves in a large vault whose domed roof had been also broken away by tree roots, so that a few streaks of light dropped down into the darkness. "A safe lair," said Mowgli, rising to his firm feet, "but over far to visit daily. And now what do we see?" "Am I nothing?" said a voice in the middle of the vault. And Mowgli saw something white move, till little by little there stood up the hugest cobra he had ever set eyes on, a creature nearly 8 feet long and bleached by being in darkness to an old ivory white. Even the spectacle marks of his spread hood had faded to faint yellow. His eyes were as red as rubies, and altogether he was most wonderful. "Good hunting," said Mowgli, who carried his manners with his knife, and that never left him. "What of the city?" said the white cobra, without answering the greeting. "What of the great, the walled city? The city of 100 elephants and 20,000 horses, and cattle past counting. The city of the king of 20 kings. Eh? I grow deaf here, and it is long since I heard their war gongs." "The jungle is above our heads," said Mowgli. "What is a king?" "I told thee," said Kaa softly to the cobra, "I told thee 4 moons ago that thy city was not." "The city? The great city of the forest, whose gates are guarded by the king's towers, can never pass. They builded it before my father's father came from the egg, and it shall endure when my son's sons are as white as I. Father of Cobra, there is only one jungle here, as it has been since the beginning." "Then who is he?" said the white cobra, "sitting down before me, unafraid, knowing not the name of the king, talking our talk through a man's lips? Who is he, with the knife and the snake's tongue?" "Mowgli, they call me," was the answer. "I'm off the jungle. The wolves are my people, and Kaa here is my brother, father of cobras. Who art thou?" "I am the warden of the king's treasure. Kurun Raja builded the stone above me, that I might teach death to those who came to steal. Then they let down the treasure through the stone." Said Mowgli to himself. "5 times since my wardship has the stone been lifted, but always to let down more and never to take away. There are no riches like these riches, the treasures of 100 kings. But it is long and long since the stone was last moved, and I think that my city has forgotten." "There is no city. Look up. Yonder are roots of the great trees tearing the stones apart. Trees and men do not grow together," Kaa insisted. "Twice and thrice have men found their way here," the white cobra answered savagely. "But they never spoke till I came upon them groping in the dark, and then they cried only a little time. I, and no other, am the warden of the king's treasure. The city is dead, ye say, and here are the roots of the trees? Stoop down, then, and take what ye will. Earth has no treasure like to these. Man with the snake's tongue, if thou canst go alive by the way that thou hast entered at, the lesser kings will be thy servants. Father of cobras, I see nothing here to take away. By the gods of the sun and moon, it is the madness of death upon the boy, hissed the cobra. Before thine eyes close, I will allow thee this favour. Look thou and see what man has never seen before. I will look, if that pleases thee. Mowgli stared with puckered-up eyes round the vault, and then lifted up from the floor a handful of something that glittered. He let the gold pieces fall and moved forward. The floor of the vault was buried some 5 or 6 feet deep in coined gold and silver that had burst from the sacks it had been originally stored in, and in the long years the metal had packed and settled as sand packs at low tide. On it and in it and rising through it, as wrecks lift through the sand, were jewelled elephant howdahs of embossed silver, studded with plates of hammered gold and adorned with carbuncles and turquoises. There were palanquins and litters for carrying queens, framed and braced with silver and enamel, with jade-handled poles and amber curtain rings. There were golden candlesticks hung with pierced emeralds that quivered on the branches. There were studded images 5 feet high of forgotten gods, silver with jewelled eyes. There were coats of mail, gold inlaid on steel and fringed with rotted and blackened seed pearls. There were helmets crested and beaded with pigeon's blood rubies. There were shields of lacquer, of tortoiseshell and rhinoceros hide, strapped and bossed with red gold, and set with emeralds at the edge. There were sheaves of diamond-hilted swords, daggers, and hunting knives. There were golden sacrificial bowls and ladles, and portable altars of a shape that never sees the light of day. There were jade cups and bracelets. There were incense burners, combs and pots for perfume, henna and eye powder, all in embossed gold. There were nose rings, armlets, headbands, finger rings, and girdles past any counting. There were belts, 7 fingers broad, of square-cut diamonds and rubies, and wooden boxes trebly clamped with iron, from which the wood had fallen away in powder, showing the pile of uncut star sapphires, opals, cat's eyes, sapphires, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, and garnets within. The white cobra was right. No mere money would begin to pay the value of this treasure, the sifted pickings of centuries of war, plunder, trade, and taxation. The coins alone were priceless, leaving out of count all the precious stones, and the dead weight of the gold and silver alone might be 200 or 300 tons. But Mowgli naturally did not understand what these things meant. The knives interested him a little, but they did not balance so well as his own, and so he dropped them. At last he found something really fascinating laid on the front of a howdah, half buried in the coins. It was a 3-foot ankus, or elephant goad, something like a small boat hook. The top was one round, shining ruby, and 8 inches of the handle below it was studded with rough turquoises close together, giving a most satisfactory grip. Below them was a rim of jade with a flower pattern running round it. Only the leaves were emeralds, and the blossoms were rubies sunk in the cool green stone. The rest of the handle was a shaft of pure ivory, while the point, the spike and hook, was gold-inlaid steel, with pictures of elephant catching, and the pictures attracted Mowgli, who saw that they had something to do with his friend Hathi the Silent. The white cobra had been following him closely. "Is this not worth dying to behold?" he said. "Have I not done thee a great favour?" "I do not understand," said Mowgli. "The things are hard and cold and by no means good to eat. But this," he lifted the ankus, "I desire to take away, that I may see it in the sun." The white cobra fairly shook with evil delight. "Assuredly I will give it," he said. "All that is here I will give thee, till thou goest away." "But I go now. This place is dark and cold, and I wish to take the thorn-pointed thing to the jungle." "Look by thy foot. What is that there?" Mowgli picked up something white and smooth. "It is the bone of a man's head," he said quietly, "and there are two more. They came to take the treasure away many years ago. I spoke to them in the dark, and they lay still." "But what do I need of this that is called treasure? If thou wilt give me the ankus to take away, it is good hunting. If not, it is good hunting none the less. I do not fight with the poison people, and I was also taught the master word of thy tribe. There is but one master word here. It is mine. Never man came here that went away with the breath under his ribs. I am the warden of the treasure of the king's city." "But thou, white worm of the dark, I tell thee there is neither king nor city. The jungle is all about us," cried Kaa. "There is still the treasure. But this can be done. Wait a while, carve the rocks, and see the boy run. There is room for great sport here. Life is good. Run to and fro a while, and make sport, boy." Mowgli put his hand on Kaa's head quietly. "The white thing has dealt with men of the man-pack until now. He does not know me," he whispered. "He's asked for this hunting. Let him have it." Mowgli had been standing with the ankus held point down. He flung it from him quickly, and it dropped crossways just behind the great snake's hood, pinning him to the floor. In a flash, Kaa's weight was upon the writhing body, paralyzing it from hood to tail. The red eyes burned, and the 6 spare inches of the head struck furiously right and left. "Kill," said Kaa as Mowgli's hand went to his knife. "No," he said as he drew the blade. "I will never kill again save for food. But look you, Kaa." He caught the cobra behind the hood, forced the mouth open with the blade of the knife, and showed the terrible poison fangs of the upper jaw lying black and withered in the gum. The white cobra had outlived his poison, as a snake will. "Thu, it is dried up," said Mowgli, and motioning Kaa away, he picked up the ankus, setting the white cobra free. "The king's treasure needs a new warden," he said gravely. "Thu, thou hast not done well. Run to and fro and make sport." "I am shamed. Kill me," hissed the white cobra. "There has been too much talk of killing. We will go now. I take the thorn-pointed thing Thu, because I have fought and worsted thee." "See, then, that the thing does not kill thee at last. It is death. Remember, it is death. There is enough in that thing to kill the men of all my city. Not long wilt thou hold it, jungle man, nor he who takes it from thee. They will kill and kill and kill for its sake. My strength is dried up, but the ankus will do my work. It is death. It is death. It is death." Mowgli crawled out through the hole into the passage again, and the last that he saw was the white cobra striking furiously with his harmless fangs and hissing, "It is death." They were glad to get to the light of day once more, and when they were back in their own jungle and Mowgli made the ankus glitter in the morning light, he was almost as pleased as though he had found a bunch of new flowers to stick in his hair. "This is brighter than Bagheera's eyes," he said delightedly as he twirled the ruby. "I will show it to him. But what did the Thu mean when he talked of death?" "I cannot say. I am sorrowful to my tail's tail that he felt not thy knife. There is always evil at coal lairs, above ground or below, but now I am hungry. Dost thou hunt with me this dawn?" said Kaa. "No, Bagheera must see this thing. Good hunting." Mowgli danced off, flourishing the great ankus, and stopping from time to time to admire it, till he came to that part of the jungle Bagheera chiefly used, and found him drinking after a heavy kill. Mowgli told him all his adventures from beginning to end, and Bagheera sniffed at the ankus between whiles. When Mowgli came to the white cobra's last words, the panther purred approvingly. "Then the White Hood spoke the thing which is?" Mowgli asked quickly. "I was born in the king's cages at Udaipur, and it is in my stomach that I know some little of man. Very many men would kill thrice in a night for the sake of that one big red stone alone. But the stone makes it heavy to the hand. My little bright knife is better, and see, the red stone is not good to eat. Then why would they kill?" "Mowgli, go thou and sleep. Thou hast lived among men, and I remember, men kill because they are not hunting for idleness and pleasure. Wake again, Bagheera. For what use was this thorn-pointed thing made?" Bagheera half opened his eyes. He was very sleepy, with a malicious twinkle. "It was made by men to thrust into the head of the sons of Hathi, so that the blood should pour out. I have seen the like in the street of Udaipur, before our cages. That thing has tasted the blood of many such as Hathi." "But why do they thrust into the heads of elephants?" "To teach them man's law. Having neither claws nor teeth, men make these things, and worse." "Always more blood when I come near, even to the things the man-pack have made," said Mowgli disgustedly. He was getting a little tired of the weight of the ankus. "If I'd known this, I would not have taken it. I will use it no more. Look!" The ankus flew sparkling and buried itself point down 30 yards away between the trees. "So my hands are clean of death," said Mowgli, rubbing his palms on the fresh, moist earth. "The Thu said death would follow me. He's old and white and mad." "White or black, or death or life, I'm going to sleep, little brother. I cannot hunt all night and howl all day, as do some folk." Bagheera went off to a hunting lair that he knew about 2 miles off. Mowgli made an easy way for himself up a convenient tree, knotted 3 or 4 creepers together, and in less time than it takes to tell, was swinging in a hammock 50 feet above ground. When he waked, among the very loud-voiced peoples that live in the trees, it was twilight once more, and he had been dreaming of the beautiful pebbles he had thrown away. "At least I will look at the thing again," he said, and slid down a creeper to the earth. But Bagheera was before him. Mowgli could hear him snuffling in the half-light. "Where is the thorn-pointed thing?" cried Mowgli. "A man has taken it. Here is the trail." "Think you the pointed thing will turn in the man's hand and kill him?" Mowgli asked. "The Thu said it was death." "We shall see when we find," said Bagheera, trotting with his head low. "It is single foot." He meant that there was only one man, and the weight of the thing has pressed his heel far into the ground. "Hi, this is as clear as summer lightning," Mowgli answered, and they fell into the quick, choppy trail trot, in and out through the checkers of the moonlight, following the marks of those 2 bare feet. "Now he runs swiftly," said Mowgli. "The toes are spread apart." They went on over some wet ground. "Now why does he turn aside here?" "Wait," said Bagheera, and flung himself forward with one superb bound as far as ever he could. The first thing to do when a trail ceases to explain itself is to cast forward without leaving your own confusing footmarks on the ground. Bagheera turned as he landed and faced Mowgli, crying, "Here comes another trail to meet him. It is a smaller foot, this second trail, and the toes turn inward." Then Mowgli ran up and looked. "It is the foot of a Gond hunter," he said. "Look, here he dragged his bow on the grass. That is why the first trail turned aside so quickly. Big Foot hid from Little Foot." "That is true," said Bagheera. They raced on another half-mile, always keeping about the same distance, till Mowgli, whose head was not so close to the ground as Bagheera's, cried, "They have met! Good hunting! Look! Here stood Littlefoot with his knee on a rock, and yonder is Bigfoot indeed." Not 10 yards in front of them, stretched across a pile of broken rocks, lay the body of a villager of the district, a long, small-feathered goned arrow through his back and breast. "Was the Thuu so old and so mad, little brother?" said Bagheera gently. "Here is one death at least." "Follow on. But where is the drinker of elephant's blood, the red-eyed thorn?" "Littlefoot has it, perhaps. It is Singlefoot again now." The single trail of a light man, who had been running quickly and bearing a burden on his left shoulder, held on round a long, low spur of dried grass, where each footfall seemed to the sharp eyes of the trackers marked in hot iron. Neither spoke till the trail ran up to the ashes of a campfire hidden in a ravine. "Again," said Bagheera, checking as though he had been turned into stone. The body of a little wizened Gond lay with its feet in the ashes, and Bagheera looked inquiringly at Mowgli. "That was done with a bamboo," said the boy after one glance. "I have used such a thing among the buffaloes when I served the man-pack. The father of cobras, oh, I'm sorrowful that I made a jest of him, knew the breed well, as I might have known. Said I not that men kill for idleness?" "Indeed, they killed for the sake of red and blue stones," Bagheera answered. "Remember, I was in the king's cages at Udaipur." "1, 2, 3, 4 tracks," said Mowgli, stooping over the ashes. "4 tracks of men with shod feet. They do not go so quickly as Gonds. Now, what evil had the little woodman done to them? See, they talked together, all 5 standing up, before they killed him. Bagheera, let us go back. My stomach is heavy in me, and yet it dances up and down like an oriole's nest at the end of a branch." It is no good hunting to leave game afoot." "Follow," said the panther. "Those 8 shod feet have not gone far." No more was said for fully an hour as they took up the broad trail of the 4 men with shod feet. It was clear, hot daylight now, and Bagheera said, "I smell smoke." "Men are always more ready to eat than to run," Mowgli answered, trotting in and out between the low scrub bushes of the new jungle they were exploring. Bagheera, a little to his left, made an indescribable noise in his throat. "Here is one that is done with feeding," said he. A tumbled bundle of gay-coloured clothes lay under a bush, and round it was some spilt flour. "That was done by the bamboo again," said Mowgli. "See, that white dust is what men eat. They've taken the kill from this one. He carried their food and given him for a kill to Cheel, the kite." "It is the 3rd," said Bagheera. "I will go with new big frogs to the father of cobras and feed him fat," said Mowgli to himself. "This drinker of elephant's blood is death himself. But still, I do not understand." "Follow," said Bagheera. They had not gone half a mile farther when they heard Ko the crow singing a death song in the top of a tamarisk under whose shade 3 men were lying. A half-dead fire smoked in the centre of the circle beneath an iron plate which held a blackened and burned cake of unleavened bread. Close to the fire and blazing in the sunshine lay the ruby and turquoise ankus. "The thing works quickly. All ends here," said Bagheera. "How did these die, Mowgli? There is no mark on any." A jungle dweller gets to learn by experience as much as many doctors know of poisonous plants and berries. Mowgli sniffed the smoke that came up from the fire, broke off a morsel of the blackened bread, tasted it, and spat it out again. "Apple of death," he coughed. "The first must have made it ready in the food for these, who killed him, having first killed the Gond." "Good hunting indeed. The kills follow close," said Bagheera. Apple of death is what the jungle call thorn apple, or datura, the readiest poison in all India. "What now?" said the panther. "Must thou and I kill each other for yonder red-eyed slayer?" "Can it speak?" said Mowgli in a whisper. "Did I do it a wrong when I threw it away? Between us two it can do no wrong, for we do not desire what men desire. If it be left here, it will assuredly continue to kill men one after another as fast as nuts fall in a high wind. I have no love to men, but even I would not have them die 6 in a night." "What matter? They are only men. They killed one another and were well pleased," said Bagheera. "That first little woodman hunted well." "They're cubs none the less, and a cub will drown himself to bite the moon's light on the water. The fault was mine," said Mowgli, who spoke as though he knew all about everything. "I will never again bring into the jungle strange things, not though be as beautiful as flowers. This," he handled the ankus gingerly, "goes back to the father of cobras. But first we must sleep, and we cannot sleep near these sleepers. Also, we must bury him, lest he run away and kill another 6. Dig me a hole under that tree." "But, little brother," said Bagheera, moving off to the spot, "I tell thee it is no fault of the blood drinker. The trouble is with the men." "All one," said Mowgli. "Dig the hole deep. When we wake, I will take him up and carry him back." Two nights later, as the white cobra sat mourning in the darkness of the vault, ashamed and robbed and alone, the turquoise ankus whirled through the hole in the wall and clashed on the floor of golden coins. "Father of cobras," said Mowgli. He was careful to keep the other side of the wall. "Get thee a young and ripe one of thine own people to help thee guard the king's treasure, so that no man may come away alive any more." "Ha ha! It returns then. I said the thing was death. How comes it that thou art still alive?" the old cobra mumbled, twining lovingly round the ankus haft. "By the bull that bought me, I do not know. That thing has killed 6 times in a night. Let him go out no more." Red Dog. It was after the letting in of the jungle that the pleasantest part of Mowgli's life began, and all the jungle was his friend, for all the jungle was afraid of him. Father and Mother Wolf died, and Mowgli rolled a big boulder against the mouth of their cave and cried the death song over them. Baloo grew very old and stiff, and even Bagheera, whose nerves were steel and whose muscles were iron, was a shade slower on the kill than he had been. Akela turned from grey to milky white with pure age, But the young wolves, the children of the disbanded Seoni pack, throve and increased, and when there were about 40 of them, masterless, full-voiced, clean-footed 5-year-olds, Akela told them that they ought to gather themselves together and follow the law, and run under one head, as befitted the free people. When Phao, son of Phaona, his father was the grey tracker in the days of Akela's headship, fought his way to the leadership of the pack according to the jungle law, Mowgli came to the council rock for memory's sake. When he chose to speak, the pack waited till he had finished, and he sat at Akela's side on the rock above Phao. Those were days of good hunting and good sleeping. No stranger cared to break into the jungles that belonged to Mowgli's people, as they called the pack. The young wolves grew fat and strong, and there were many cubs to bring to the looking over. Mowgli always attended a looking over, remembering the night when a black panther brought a naked brown baby into the pack, and the long call, "Look! Look well, O wolves!" made his heart flutter. Otherwise he would be far away in the jungle with his 4 brothers, tasting, touching, seeing, and feeling new things. One twilight, when he was trotting leisurely across the ranges, he heard a cry that had never been heard since the bad days of Shirkhan. It was what they call in the jungle the fial, a hideous kind of shriek that the jackal gives when he is hunting behind a tiger, or when there is a big killing afoot. Mowgli's hand went to his knife, and he checked, the blood in his face, his eyebrows knotted. "There is no striped one dare kill here," he said. "That is not the cry of the forerunner," answered Grey Brother. "It is some great killing. Listen." It broke out again, half sobbing and half chuckling, just as though the jackal had soft human lips. Then Mowgli drew deep breath and ran to the council rock, overtaking on his way hurrying wolves of the pack. Phao and Akela were on the rock together, and below them, every nerve strained, sat the others. The mothers and the cubs were cantering off to their lairs, for when the fial cries, it is no time for weak things to be abroad. They could hear nothing except the Waingunga rushing and gurgling in the dark, and the light evening winds among the treetops, till suddenly across the river a wolf called. It was no wolf of the pack, for they were all at the rock. The note changed to a long, despairing bay, and "Dole!" it said. "Dole! Dole! Dole!" They heard tired feet on the rocks, and a gaunt wolf, streaked with red on his flanks, his right forepaw useless, and his jaws white with foam, flung himself into the circle and lay gasping at Mowgli's feet. "Good hunting under whose headship?" said Phao gravely. "Good hunting. Wantalamai," was the answer. He meant that he was a solitary wolf, fending for himself, his mate, and his cubs in some lonely lair, as do many wolves in the south. Wantala means an outlier, one who lies out from any pack. Then he panted, and they could see his heartbeats shake him backward and forward. "What moves?" said Phao, for that is the question all the jungle asks after the fial. The dole of the Deccan, Red Dog, the killer. They came north from the south, saying the Deccan was empty and killing out by the way. When this moon was new, there were 4 to me, my mate and 3 cubs. She would teach them to kill on the grass plains, hiding to drive the buck as we do, who are of the open. At midnight I heard them together, full tongue on the trail. At the dawn wind I found them stiff in the grass. 4 free people, 4 when this moon was new. Then sought I my blood right and found the dole." "How many?" said Mowgli. The pack growled deep in their throats. "I do not know. Look, free people." He thrust out his mangled forefoot, all dark with dried blood. There were cruel bites low down on his side, and his throat was torn and worried. "Eat," said Akela, and the outlier flung himself on it. Phao heard his teeth crack on a haunch bone and grunted approvingly. "We shall need those jaws," said he. "Were there cubs with the dhole?" "Nay, nay, red hunters all, grown dogs of their pack, heavy and strong for all that they eat lizards in the Deccan." What Wantala had said meant that the dhole, the red hunting dog of the Deccan, was moving to kill, and the pack knew well that even the tiger will surrender a new kill to the dhole. They drive straight through the jungle, and what they meet they put down and tear to pieces. Though they are not as big nor half as cunning as the wolf, they are very strong and very numerous. Even Hathi moves aside from their line, and until they're killed, or till game is scarce, they will go forward. Akela knew something of the dholes too, for he said to Mowgli quietly, "It is better to die in a full pack than leaderless and alone. This is good hunting, and my last. But as men live, thou hast very many more nights and days, little brother. Go north and lie down, and if any live after the dhole has gone by, he shall bring thee word of the fight." "Ah," said Mowgli, quite gravely. "Must I go while the pack fight below?" "It is to the death," said Akela. "Thou hast never met the dhole, the red killer, even the striped one." "Wah, wah," said Mowgli, pettingly. "Listen now. There was a wolf my father, and there was a wolf my mother, and there was an old grey wolf, not too wise, he's white now, was my father and my mother. Therefore he raised his voice, "I say that when the dhole come, and if the dhole come, Mowgli and the free people are of one skin for that hunting. And I say, by the bull that bought me, by the bull Bagheera paid for me in the old days, I say that this my knife shall be as tooth to the pack. And I do not think it is so blunt. This is my word which has gone from me." "Thou dost not know the dhole, man with a wolf's tongue," said Wantala. "Hear the outlier," said Mowgli with a laugh. "Free people, we must go north and dig lizards and rats from the bank, lest by any chance we meet the dhole. It is good hunting for the pack, for the full pack. It is met, it is met, it is met." The pack answered with one deep, crashing bark that sounded in the night like a big tree falling. "It is met," they cried. He hurried off into the darkness, wild with excitement, hardly looking where he set foot, and the natural consequence was that he tripped full length over Kaa's great coils, where the python lay watching a deer path near the river. "Ksh!" said Kaa angrily. "Is this jungle work, to stamp and tramp and undo a night's hunting, when the game are moving so well too?" "The fault was mine," said Mowgli, picking himself up. "Indeed, I was seeking thee, Flathead, but each time we meet thou art longer and broader by the length of my arm. There is none like thee in the jungle, wise, old, strong, and most beautiful Kaa. Now, whither does this trail lead?" Kaa's voice was gentler. Kaa had, as usual, made a sort of soft half-hammock of himself under Mowgli's weight. The boy reached out in the darkness and gathered in the supple cable-like neck till Kaa's head rested on his shoulder, and then he told him all that had happened in the jungle that night. "How many be the dhole?" "I have not yet seen. I came hot-foot to thee." Here Mowgli wriggled with sheer joy. "It will be good hunting. Few of us will see another moon." "Dost thou strike in this? Remember thou art a man, and remember what pack cast thee out. Let the wolf look to the dog. Thou art a man." "It is true that I am a man, but it is in my stomach that this night I have said that I am a wolf. I am of the free people, Kaa, till the dhole has gone by." "Shh! This changes all trails." "Be it so, then," said Kaa. "I will give no word but what is in thy stomach to do when the dhole come." "They must swim the Wainganga. I thought to meet them with my knife in the shallows, the pack behind me, and so stabbing and thrusting, we a little might turn them downstream or cool their throats." The dhole do not turn, and their throats are hot, said Kaa. There will be neither manling nor wolf cub when that hunting is done, but only dry bones. Allah, if we die, we die. It'll be most good hunting. But my stomach is young, and I've not seen many rains. I'm not wise nor strong. Hast thou a better plan, Kaa? For a long hour, Mowgli lay back among the coils, while Kaa, his head motionless on the ground, thought of all that he had seen and known since the day he came from the egg. The light seemed to go out of his eyes and leave them like stale opals, and now and again he made little stiff passes with his head right and left, as though he were hunting in his sleep. Mowgli dozed quietly, for he knew that there is nothing like sleep before hunting, and he was trained to take it at any hour of the day or night. Then he felt Kaa's back grow bigger and broader below him, as the huge python puffed himself out, hissing with the noise of a sword drawn from a steel scabbard. Shh! Now we will go to the river, and I will show thee what is to be done against the dhole. He turned, straight as an arrow, for the main stream of the Wainganga, plunging in a little above the pool that hid the peace rock, Mowgli at his side. Nay, do not swim. I go swiftly. My back, little brother. Mowgli tucked his left arm round Kaa's neck, dropped his right close to his body, and straightened his feet. Then Kaa breasted the current as he alone could, and the ripple of the checked water stood up in a frill round Mowgli's neck, and his feet were waved to and fro in the eddy under the python's lashing sides. A mile or two above the Peace Rock, the Wainganga narrows between a gorge of marble rocks from 80 to 100 feet high, and the current runs like a mill race between and over all manner of ugly stones. But Mowgli did not trouble his head about the water. Little water in the world could have given him a moment's fear. He was looking at the gorge on either side and sniffing uneasily, for there was a sweetish, sourish smell in the air, very like the smell of a big ant-hill on a hot day. Instinctively, he lowered himself in the water, only raising his head to breathe from time to time, and Kaa came to anchor with a double twist of his tail round a sunken rock, holding Mowgli in the hollow of a coil while the water raced on. "This is the place of death," said the boy. "Why do we come here?" "They sleep," said Kaa. "Hathi will not turn aside for the striped one, yet Hathi and the striped one together turn aside for the dhole, and the dhole, they say, turn aside for nothing. And yet, for whom do the little people of the rocks turn aside? Tell me, Master of the Jungle, who is the Master of the Jungle?" "These," Mowgli whispered. "It is the place of death. Let us go." "Nay, look well, for they are asleep. It is as it was when I was not the length of thy arm." The split and weather-worn rocks of the gorge of the Wainganga had been used since the beginning of the jungle by the little people of the rocks, the busy, furious, black wild bees of India. For centuries the little people had hived and swarmed from cleft to cleft, and swarmed again, staining the white marble with stale honey, and made their combs tall and deep in the dark of the inner caves, where neither man nor beast nor fire nor water had ever touched them. The length of the gorge on both sides was hung, as it were, with black shimmery velvet curtains, and Mowgli sank as he looked, for those were the clotted millions of the sleeping bees. As he listened, he heard more than once the rustle and slide of a honey-loaded comb turning over or falling away somewhere in the dark galleries. Then a booming of angry wings, and the sullen drip, drip, drip of the wasted honey, guttering along till it lipped over some ledge in the open air and sluggishly trickled down on the twigs. Kaa moved upstream again till he came to a sandy bar at the head of the gorge. "Here is this season's kill," said he. "Look!" On the bank lay the skeletons of a couple of young deer and a buffalo. Mowgli could see that no wolf nor jackal had touched the bones, which were laid out naturally. "They came beyond the line. They did not know," murmured Mowgli, "and the little people killed them. Let us go ere they awake." "They do not wake till the dawn," said Kaa. "Now I will tell thee. Look now. If the dhole follow thee, if they follow thee hot and blind, looking only at thy shoulders, those who do not die up above will take water either here or lower down, for the little people will rise up and cover them. Now the Wainganga is hungry water, and they will have no car to hold them, but will go down, such as live, to the shallows by the Seoni lairs, and there thy pack may meet them by the throat." Then Kaa swam downstream, and opposite the rock he came on Phao and Akela, listening to the night noises. "Shh! Dogs," he said cheerfully. "The dholes will come downstream. If ye be not afraid, ye can kill them in the shallows." "When come they?" said Phao. "And where is my man-cub?" "They come when they come," said Kaa. "Wait here for the dhole, and be glad that the man-cub and I strike on thy side." Kaa flashed upstream again and moored himself in the middle of the gorge, looking upward at the line of the cliff. Presently he saw Mowgli's head move against the stars, and then there was a whiz in the air, the keen, clean sloop of a body falling feet first, and next minute the boy was at rest again in the loop of Kaa's body. "It is no leap by night," said Mowgli quietly. "I have jumped twice as far for sport, but that is an evil place above, low bushes and gullies that go down very deep, all full of the little people. I have put big stones, one above the other, by the side of 3 gullies. These I shall throw down with my feet in running, and the little people will rise up behind me, very angry." "That is man's talk and man's cunning," said Kaa. "Thou art wise, but the little people are always angry." "Nay, at twilight all wings near and far rest for a while. I will play with the dhole at twilight, for the dhole hunts best by day. He follows now Wontala's blood trail." He loosed his arm from the python's neck and went down the gorge like a log in a freshet, paddling towards the far bank, where he found slack water, and laughing aloud from sheer happiness. There was nothing Mowgli liked better than, as he himself said, to pull the whiskers of death, and make the jungle know that he was their overlord. He knew that the little people hated the smell of wild garlic, so he gathered a small bundle of it, tied it up with a bark string, and then followed Wontala's blood trail as it ran southerly from the lairs for some 5 miles, looking at the trees with his head on one side and chuckling as he looked. A little before midday, when the sun was very warm, he heard the clatter of feet and smelt the abominable smell of the dhole pack as they trotted pitilessly along Wontala's trail. Seen from above, the red dhole does not look half the size of a wolf, but Mowgli knew how strong his feet and jaws were. He watched the sharp bay head of the leader snuffling along the trail and gave him "Good hunting!" The brute looked up, and his companions halted behind him, scores and scores of red dogs with low-hung tails, heavy shoulders, weak quarters, and bloody mouths. The dholes are a very silent people as a rule, and they have no manners even in their own Deccan. Fully 200 must have gathered below him, but he could see that the leaders sniffed hungrily on Wontala's trail and tried to drag the pack forward. That would never do, or they would be at the lairs in broad daylight, and Mowgli meant to hold them under his tree till twilight. "By whose leave do ye come here?" said Mowgli. "All jungles are our jungle," was the reply, and the dhole that gave it bared his white teeth. For an answer, Mowgli stretched down one naked leg and wriggled his bare toes just above the leader's head. That was enough, and more than enough, to wake the pack to stupid rage. Those who have hair between their toes do not care to be reminded of it. "Calm down, ere we starve thee out, hairless ape!" yelled the pack. And this was exactly what Mowgli wanted. He laid himself down along the branch, his cheek to the bark, his right arm free, and there he told the pack what he thought and knew about them, their manners, their customs, their mates, and their puppies. There is no speech in the world so rancorous and so stinging as the language the jungle people use to show scorn and contempt. When you come to think of it, you will see how this must be so. As Mowgli told Kaa, he had many little thorns under his tongue, and slowly and deliberately he drove the dholes from silence to growls, from growls to yells, and from yells to hoarse slavery ravings. They tried to answer his taunts, but a cub might as well have tried to answer Kaa in a rage, and all the while Mowgli's right hand lay crooked at his side, ready for action, his feet locked round the branch. The big bay leader had leaped many times in the air, but Mowgli dared not risk a false blow. At last, made furious beyond his natural strength, he bounded up 7 or 8 feet clear of the ground. Then Mowgli's hand shot out like the head of a tree snake and gripped him by the scruff of his neck, and the branch shook with the jar as his weight fell back, almost wrenching Mowgli to the ground. But he never loosed his grip, and inch by inch he hauled the beast, hanging like a drowned jackal, up on the branch. With his left hand he reached for his knife and cut off the red bushy tail, flinging the dhole back to earth again. That was all he needed. The pack would not go forward on One Teller's trail now till they had killed Mowgli, or Mowgli had killed them. He saw them settle down in circles with a quiver of the haunches that meant they were going to stay. And so he climbed to a higher crotch, settled his back comfortably, and went to sleep. After 3 or 4 hours he waked and counted the pack. They were all there, silent, husky and dry, with eyes of steel. The sun was beginning to sink. In half an hour the little people of the rocks would be ending their labours, and as you know, the dhole does not fight best in the twilight. Mowgli moved monkey fashion into the next tree, and so on into the next and the next, the pack following with lifted, hungry heads. Now and then he would pretend to fall, and the pack would tumble one over the other in their haste to be in at the death. It was a curious sight. The boy with the knife that shone in the low sunlight as it sifted through the upper branches, and the silent pack with their red coats all aflame, huddling and following below. When he came to the last tree, he took the garlic and rubbed himself all over carefully, and the dholes yelled with scorn. "Ape with a wolf's tongue, dost thou think to cover thy scent?" they said. "We will follow to the death." "Take thy tail," said Mowgli, flinging it back along the course he had taken. The pack naturally rushed back a little when they smelt the blood. "And follow now to the death." He had slipped down the tree trunk and headed like the wind in bare feet for the bee rocks before the dholes saw what he would do. They gave one deep howl and settled down to the long, lobbing canter that can at the last run down anything that runs. Mowgli knew their pack pace to be much slower than that of the wolves, or he would never have risked a 2-mile run in full sight. They were sure that the boy was theirs at last, and he was sure that he held them to play with as he pleased. So he kept his distance by ear, reserving his last effort for the rush across the bee rocks. The little people had gone to sleep in the early twilight, for it was not the season of late blossoming flowers. But as Mowgli's first footfalls rang hollow on the hollow ground, he heard a sound as though all the earth were humming. Then he ran as he had never run in his life before, spurned aside 1, 2, 3 of the piles of stones into the dark, sweet-smelling gullies, heard a roar like the roar of the sea in a cave, saw with the tail of his eye the air grow dark behind him, saw the current of the Wainganga far below, and a flat diamond-shaped head in the water, leaped outward with all his strength, the tailless dhole snapping at his shoulder in mid-air, and dropped feet first to the safety of the river, breathless and triumphant. There was not a sting upon him, for the smell of the garlic had checked the little people for just the few seconds that he was among them. When he rose, Kaa's coils were steadying him, and things were bounding over the edge of the cliff. Great lumps, it seemed, of clustered bees falling like plummets. But before any lump touched water, the bees flew upward, and the body of a dhole whirled downstream. Overhead they could hear furious short yells that were drowned in a roar like breakers, the roar of the wings of the little people of the rocks. Some of the dholes too had fallen into the gullies that communicated with the underground caves, and there choked and fought and snapped among the tumbled honeycombs, and at last borne up, even when they were dead, on the heaving waves of bees beneath them, shot out of some hole in the river face to roll over on the black rubbish heaps. There were dholes who had leaped short into the trees on the cliffs, and the bees blotted out their shapes. But the greater number of them, maddened by the stings, had flung themselves into the river, and as Kaa said, the Wainganga was hungry water. Kaa held Mowgli fast till the boy had recovered his breath. "We may not stay here," he said. "The little people are roused indeed. Come." Swimming low and diving as often as he could, Mowgli went down the river, knife in hand. "Slowly, slowly," said Kaa. "One tooth does not kill 100 unless it be a cobra's, and many of the dholes took water swiftly when they saw the little people rise. The more work for my knife, then. Fie! How the little people follow!" Mowgli sank again. The face of the water was blanketed with wild bees, buzzing sullenly and stinging all they found. "Nothing was ever yet lost by silence," said Kaa. "No sting could penetrate his scales, and thou hast all the long night for the hunting. Hear them howl." Nearly half the pack had seen the trap their fellows rushed into, and turning sharp aside had flung themselves into the water where the gorge broke down in steep banks. Their cries of rage and their threats against the tree ape who had brought them to their shame mixed with the yells and growls of those who had been punished by the little people. To remain ashore was death, and every dhole knew it. Their pack was swept along the current down to the deep eddies of the Peace Pool, but even there the angry little people followed and forced them to the water again. Mowgli could hear the voice of the tailless leader bidding his people hold on and kill out every wolf in Seoni, but he did not waste his time in listening. "One kills in the dark behind us," snapped a dhole. "Here is tainted water." Mowgli had dived forward like an otter, twitched a struggling dhole underwater before he could open his mouth, and dark rings rose as the body plopped up, turning on its side. The dholes tried to turn, but the current prevented them, and the little people darted at their heads and ears, and they could hear the challenge of the Seoni pack growing louder and deeper in the gathering darkness. Again Mowgli dived, and again a dhole went under and rose dead, and again the clamour broke out at the rear of the pack, some howling that it was best to go ashore, others calling on their leader to lead them back to the Deccan, and others bidding Mowgli show himself and be killed. "They come to the fight with 2 stomachs and several voices," said Kaa. "The rest is with thy brethren below yonder. The little people go back to sleep. They've chased us far. Now I too turn back, for I'm not of one skin with any wolf. Good hunting, little brother, and remember, the dhole bites slow." A wolf came running along the bank on 3 legs, leaping up and down, laying his head sideways close to the ground, hunching his back and breaking a couple of feet into the air as though he were playing with his cubs. It was Won Tulla, the outlier, and he said never a word, but continued his horrible sport beside the dholes. They had been long in the water now and were swimming laboriously, their coats drenched and heavy, and their bushy tails dragging like sponges, so tired and shaken that they too were silent, watching the pair of blazing eyes that moved abreast of them. "This is no good hunting," said one at last. "Good hunting," said Mowgli, as he rose boldly at the brute's side and sent the long knife home beside the shoulder, pushing hard to avoid the dying snap. "Art thou there, man cub?" said Won Tolla from the bank. "Ask of the dead, outlier," Mowgli replied. "Have none come downstream? I have filled these dogs' mouths with dirt. I have tricked them in the broad daylight, and their leader lacks his tail. But here be some few for thee still. Whither shall I drive them?" Nearer and nearer came the bay of the Seeonee wolves. For the pack, for the full pack, it is met. Ow! And a bend in the river drove the dholes forward among the sands and shoals opposite the Seeonee lairs. Then they saw their mistake. They should have landed half a mile higher up and rushed the wolves on dry ground. Now it was too late. The bank was lined with burning eyes, and except for the horrible fjell that had never stopped since sundown, there was no sound in the jungle. It seemed as though Won Tolla were fawning on them to come ashore. "And turn and take hold," said the leader of the dholes. The entire pack flung themselves at the shore, threshing and squattering through the shoal water, till the face of the Waingunga was all white and torn, and the great ripples went from side to side like bow waves from a boat. Mowgli followed the rush, stabbing and slicing as the dholes, huddled together, rushed up the river beach in one wave. Then the long fight began. Heaving and straining and splitting and scattering and narrowing and broadening along the red wet sands and over and between the tangled tree roots and through and among the bushes and in and out of the grass clumps, for even now the dholes were 2 to 1, but they met wolves fighting for all that made the pack, and not only the short, high, deep-chested, white-tusked hunters of the pack, but the anxious-eyed lahinis, the she-wolves of the lair, as the saying is, fighting for their litters, with here and there a yearling wolf, his first coat still half woolly, tugging and grappling by their sides. A wolf, you must know, flies at the throat or snaps at the flank, while a dhole, by preference, bites at the belly. So when the dholes were struggling out of the water and had to raise their heads, the odds were with the wolves. On dry land the wolves suffered, but in the water or ashore, Mowgli's knife came and went without ceasing. The 4 had worried their way to his side. Grey Brother, crouched between the boy's knees, was protecting his stomach, while the others guarded his back on either side or stood over him, when the shock of a leaping, yelling dhole who had thrown himself full on the steady blade bore him down. For the rest, it was one tangled confusion, a locked and swaying mob that moved from right to left and from left to right along the bank, and also ground round and round slowly on its own centre. Once Mowgli passed Akela, a dhole on either flank, and his all but toothless jaws closed over the loins of a third, and once he saw Phao, his teeth set in the throat of a dhole, tugging the unwilling beast forward till the yearlings could finish him. But the bulk of the fight was blind flurry and smother in the dark, hit, trip and tumble, yelp, groan and worry round him, and behind him and above him. Won Tolla was fearfully punished, but his grip had paralyzed the dhole, who could not turn round and reach him. "By the bull that bought me," said Mowgli with a bitter laugh, "it is the tailless one." A dhole leaped to his leader's aid, but before his teeth had found Won Tolla's flank, Mowgli's knife was at his throat and in his throat, and Grey Brother took what was left. "And thus do we do in the jungle," said Mowgli. Won Tolla said not a word, only his jaws were closing and closing on the backbone as his life ebbed. The dhole shuddered, his head dropped, and he lay still, and Won Tolla dropped above him. "Ha! The blood debt is paid," said Mowgli. "Sing the song, Won Tolla." "He hunts no more," said Grey Brother. And Akela, too, is silent this long time.
The bone is cracked, thundered Phao, son of Fiona. They go! Kill! Kill out, O hunters of the free people!
Dole after dole was slinking away from those dark and bloody sands to the river, to the thick jungle upstream or downstream as he saw the road clear. "The debt! The debt!" shouted Mowgli. "Pay the debt! They have slain the lone wolf! Let not a dog go!" He was flying to the river, knife in hand, to check any dole who dared to take water, when from under a mound of 9 dead rose Akela's head and forequarters, and Mowgli dropped on his knees beside the lone wolf. "Said I not it would be my last fight?" Akela gasped. "It is good hunting. And thou, little brother? Oh, I live, having killed many. Even so, I die, and I would die by thee, little brother." Mowgli took the terribly scarred head on his knees and put his arms round the torn neck. "It is long since the old days of Shirkhan and a man-cub that rolled naked in the dust." "Nay, nay, I'm a wolf. I'm of one skin with the free people," Mowgli cried. "It is no will of mine that I'm a man." "Thou art a man, little brother. Wolfling of my watching, thou art a man, or else the pack had fled before the dole. My life I owe to thee, and today thou hast saved the pack, even as once I saved thee. All debts are paid now. Go to thine own people. I tell thee again, eye of my eye. This hunting is ended. Go to thine own people." "I will never go. I will hunt alone in the jungle. I have said it." "After the summer come the rains, and after the rains comes the spring. Go back before thou art driven." "Who will drive me?" "Mowgli will drive Mowgli. Go back to thy people. Go to man." "When Mowgli drives Mowgli, I will go," Mowgli answered. "There is no more to say," said Akela. "Little brother, canst thou raise me to my feet? I also was a leader of the free people." Very carefully and gently, Mowgli raised Akela to his feet, both arms round him, and the lone wolf drew a deep breath and began the death song that a leader of the pack should sing when he dies. It gathered strength as he went on, lifting and ringing far across the river, till it came to the last "Good hunting!" And Akela shook himself clear of Mowgli for an instant, and leaping into the air, fell backwards dead upon his last and most terrible kill. Mowgli sat with his head on his knees, careless of anything else, while the last of the dying doles were being overtaken and run down by the merciless lahinis. Little by little the cries died away, and the wolves came back limping as their wounds stiffened to take stock of the dead. 15 of the pack, as well as half a dozen lahinis, were dead by the river, and of the others not one was unmarked. Mowgli sat through it all till the cold daybreak, when Pharaoh's wet red muzzle was dropped in his hand, and Mowgli drew back to show the gaunt body of Akela. "Good hunting," said Pharaoh, as though Akela was still alive, and then over his bitten shoulder to the others, "Howl, dogs! A wolf has died tonight! Ow! Ow! Ow!" But of all the pack of 200 fighting dholes, whose boast was that all jungles were their jungle, and that no living thing could stand before them, not one returned to the Deccan to carry that